The girl I had spent 13 years protecting handed me a bone with a silk ribbon tied around it and told me, with a perfectly straight face, that it was a gift. I want to be clear about something before we go any further. Back on my old world, the blue one, the one with the coffee and the traffic and the total absence of people who can spit lightning out of their palms, a gift with a ribbon on it usually meant somebody liked you. Here, in the Taishuan Holy Land, it meant Li Meiling had just poisoned me in front of a hall full of witnesses and wanted me to say thank you. The bone was an azure phoenix spirit bone. Top grade, or it looked top grade, which is the whole trick. Refine a bone like that into your cave heaven and you open a grotto, condense a Dharma image, and jump a whole tier of talent in an afternoon. So of course I refined it. I was Lin Feng, the #1 quasi-saint child of the Holy Land, 10 days out from the contest that would make me a saint, and my childhood sweetheart had just personally handed me the fast track. The fast track turned out to be a cliff. The bone was a waste bone, hollowed out and stuffed with mysterious female poison, and the second it touched my sea of energy, my cultivation started draining out of me like someone had pulled the plug in a bathtub. Spirit sea 9th layer down to 7th, blood decaying, potential overdrawn. My meridians felt like they were being wrung out by hand. For Brother Jian, Meiling said, I can sacrifice you. Brother Jian, Zhao Jian, the ancient sacred body. The one she decided, somewhere in that calculating little head of hers, was worthy of her. Which by process of elimination meant I was not. 13 years. I led her onto the cultivation path when we were kids. I handed her my entire monthly stipend, month after month, so she could climb high enough to become a saintess while I stayed stuck one rung down, cheering her on like an idiot, and her thank you note was a poisoned bone with a bow on it. You'll lose to Brother Jian in the saint competition in 10 days, she told me, already turning to leave, the way you'd tell a waiter you were done with your plate. Don't take it too hard. Something in me that had been soft for 13 years quietly turned to stone. I didn't beg. I didn't chase her down the hall to ask what I'd done wrong, which, spoiler, was the correct call because the answer was nothing. I just filed it away, the whole neat little transaction of it. Sincerity and affection, I decided, are the two cheapest things in the world, and if I ever got the chance to do the last 13 years over again, I would not turn back for a single one of them. Then the vultures came to visit. News that Lin Feng was finished traveled through the Holy Land faster than the poison had traveled through my meridians. By evening, my peak was a receiving line of concerned quasi-saint children, all of them here to check on my health, all of them beaming. Chen Wei, ranked 19th, Zhao Gong, 27th, Liu Hao, 39th, Zhang Chen, ranked 7th, who patted my shoulder with what he swore was heartfelt sympathy and grazed me with a palm strike that slipped, so sorry, couldn't control my martial skill. Sure you couldn't. One of them, a top 10 face I don't even remember, slapped me across the mouth on his way out and called it a friendly reminder to keep a low profile. By the time they'd all had their turn, the rumor had grown a beautiful set of extra legs. Lin Feng had ruined himself with a forbidden technique. Lin Feng couldn't cultivate anymore. Lin Feng, and this is a genuine quote that spread across 3 peaks, could no longer, engage in sexual activity. I have no idea who started that one, but I hope it kept them warm at night. So there's the room. Crippled, robbed, slapped, mocked, and slandered, all inside of one day. I was sitting in the Holy Land's library with a stack of medical scrolls, none of which had a cure, waiting to see how much lower the floor could go. That's when a bell went off inside my skull. Ding. Divine rank side effect system. Activated. I actually wept. Not a single dignified tear either. Full sobbing. I had waited 20 years for this thing. 20 years since the day I woke up in this body as a boy who'd spent the whole time convinced he was crazy, remembering a blue planet and a life that had ended and this half-heard promise that a system would come. And it finally showed up on the worst day of that entire 20 years, which, if you know anything about how these stories go, was exactly on schedule. There was no starter pack, no free pile of spirit stones, no cheat pill, no map with a glowing arrow. The system informed me, in the tone of a motivational poster that hated me, that an underdog rises by his own effort. Great. Love that for me. What it did have was one function, and it was the single most beautiful function I have ever read. It took every side effect I suffered and dumped it onto a target of my choosing. Cultivation decline, poison, soul splitting, divine ability backlash, any drawback, any curse, any horrible price tag on any horrible technique, it would peel off of me and staple onto some other poor soul instead. For now, I could only designate one target, but the cap, the panel told me, would grow as I cultivated. I sat there in the library with my ruined meridians and my dead reputation, and I started to laugh quietly into a medical scroll like a lunatic, because I had just realized that I was not the man who'd been handed a poisoned bone. I was the man who could hand it right back. First problem, money. I had exactly 1,000 spirit stones to my name because the rest of my stipend had gone, every month, into making a saintess who'd repaid me in poison. 1,000 stones does not buy medicine that cures the incurable, but but it does buy you a trip to the black market in Huangfeng Valley and a shop called the Modan, which sells the kind of pills that are technically pills the way pond water is technically soup. They sold me counterfeit gathering ki pills, 3 stones each after I haggled, which got me 320 of them, plus a handful the shopkeeper threw in to make me go away. These pills are garbage, worse than garbage. They force feed you raw ki, wrench your dantian open before it's ready, and burn out your potential to do it. A normal cultivator would treat them like poison. I ate them like candy on the walk home. Because the side effects weren't going to be my problem, I picked my target. It wasn't a hard choice. Zhao Jian, the ancient sacred body, the man my sweetheart traded me in for. Then I got to work. 30 pills reopened me to Spirit Sea 8th, 50 more, Spirit Sea 9th, 100 more cracked the half-ruined cave heaven back open. And the Azure Phoenix bone, the poisoned one, the gift, I refined it properly this time, with every drawback and every drop of mysterious female venom shipped straight to Zhao Jian's address. What was left when the poison peeled away was pure. It condensed into an azure phoenix dharma image, extraordinary rank, a bird whose speed is second in this world only to the Kunpeng himself. The bone that was meant to end me made me faster than almost anything alive. And somewhere across the Holy Land, a man I'd never so much as spoken to that week was about to have the worst month of his life, and no idea why. Zhao Jian was on peak 81, feeling confident. I know because Li Meiling was with him, reassuring him that I was crippled, that the 10 days were a formality, that his saint seat was already warm. He decided to celebrate by refining a top-grade Xuanling flower to push himself to Spirit Sea 8th. Halfway through the breakthrough, his ki and blood suddenly went into freefall. Spirit Sea 7th, 6th, 5th. Dozens of meridians snapped like overtuned strings. He folded over, retching, across his own cultivation chamber. Panicking, he swallowed a low-grade Zhuan pill to stabilize, and it dropped him further, to Spirit Sea 4th, and then he fainted. If you've ever grinded a character up to the top of the ladder over months, and then watched a bug delete 3 ranks of progress in 10 seconds while you mash buttons, you have felt exactly what Zhao Jian felt. Diamond to bronze, no refunds, except the bug was me. I, meanwhile, mastered the Azure Phoenix's swift shadow technique in 3 days. It throws after images, a whole flickering crowd of me, so an opponent's strike lands on smoke while the real me is already behind him. Beautiful movement art. Useless without something to hit with, though, so I needed Cave Heaven martial techniques, which meant a trip to the treasury. The Treasury Pavilion runs on contribution and stipend. A saint draws 10,000 stones a month, which I would have loved, except I'd given all of mine to you-know-who. What I did still have was the right to 2 techniques a month, so I went to collect. Floor 1 of the Treasury was a wall of whispers the second I walked in. Broke both legs, grew 3 heads, can't have kids. The full greatest hits album. The transmission elder manning the floor felt my aura, frowned, and told me to release my breath so he could confirm the sad news for himself. So I did. The Azure Phoenix Dharma image unfurled behind me, a blue phantom bird filling the whole pavilion, an extraordinary rank image on a boy everyone in the building had spent a full day burying. The elder's jaw did something complicated. He waved the aura down fast, glanced at the door to make sure no one important had seen, and very quickly issued me my 2 techniques, like a man hoping I'd take them and leave before the rumor he'd been enjoying collapsed on top of him. Here's where I have to explain my shopping strategy because it made everyone I met that month think I had brain damage. I did not want the good techniques. Floor 2 of the Treasury had gleaming shelves of clean, safe, powerful arts, and I walked straight past all of them into the dusty corner where they keep the ones nobody's insane enough to cultivate. The abandoned rack. The techniques with warning labels. I picked 2. The dragon subduing tiger taming skill, which makes your body monstrous and your strength enormous, at the cost of your meridians tearing and 30 minutes of your organs feeling like they're being ironed every single night. And the 7 emotions disturbing desire. Fist, which attacks body and soul at once, scrambles an enemy's feelings until they go insane, and, in the fine print, drives the cultivator insane too. The elder on floor 2 actually tried to stop me, held the scrolls back and asked, gently, the way you'd talk to someone standing on a ledge, whether I understood what these did. I told him yes, and that I picked them because they were quick to learn. He did not find this reassuring. Neither would you. But he didn't know about the little function living in the back of my skull, the one that reads every one of those horrible side effects and mails it, postage due, to Zhao Jian. To me, they weren't cursed techniques. They were free power with the price tag pointed at someone else. I ran an errand to break them in. The mission hall had a quest, a Zhuan rank 3 job to fetch a snow-listening jade ginseng from Guishui Ridge, out in the forest of 10,000 beasts. Reward, 1,500 contribution points, 10,000 stones, and a favor owed by the 7th-ranked quasi-holy daughter, a girl named Shu Ling, whose quest card I was, technically, stealing off the board. Gao Yun, ranked 2nd, watched me take it and advised me, with great warmth, to give up and keep a low profile, since I had no hope. Second time I'd heard low profile that week. I was starting to think it was the local way of saying please stop existing so loudly. I broke in the 2 techniques on vicious beasts along the road. Mastered dragon subduing in half a day, because it turns out learning is easy when the agony gets couriered elsewhere. The 7 emotions. Fist made a pack of beasts stop fighting me and start tearing each other apart over feelings they'd invented on the spot, which was both extremely effective and, I'm not going to lie, extremely funny to watch. Zhao Jian had another bad night around then. He'd bought a great rejuvenation pill, clawed his way back to Spirit C5th, and was daring to feel hopeful again when his meridians snapped a second time and his emotions detonated because the 7 emotions backlash had joined the dragon subduing backlash in his personal mailbox. Word reached me that he'd been found on the floor screaming that the Heavenly Dao was trying to kill him personally. Not the Heavenly Dao, Brother Jian. Just a guy you never noticed, one peek over, learning martial arts for free. Guizhui Ridge sits deep in the forest of 10,000 beasts, and it is cold in the way that feels personal. It's snow ape country, which means the air is thick with yin and every gust of wind carries the smell of something enormous that would like to eat you. I moved through it on Azure Phoenix speed, sliding between the apes as afterimages, letting them swing at the ghost of me and hit nothing but snow. The ginseng was growing at the lip of a lime-white icy pool, which I should have recognized immediately as a bad address, because the reason the pool was that color was that it was a snow ape graveyard, and the reason it was a graveyard was sitting at the bottom of it. I found 2 snow-listening jade ginseng right at the edge, took them, and that was when the ground stood up. It wasn't a hill, it was an ape the size of a small mountain, an ancestor of the whole clan, and it had opinions about me being in its cemetery. I did the only reasonable thing a man can do when a mountain wakes up angry, which is dive headfirst into the freezing corpse pool to break line of sight, which is when the system, who has excellent timing when it comes to nearly getting me killed, pinged. Treasure with severe side effects detected. Down at the bottom of the pool, under a few centuries of dead apes, was a bone. Black, corrupted, wrong in a way that made my teeth ache just being near it. A cursed Tao Ti demon bone, gnawed on by an ancient curse that eats life essence and sanity in equal helpings. To a normal cultivator, it was a beautifully wrapped way to lose your mind, and then your life. To me, well, you already know how I felt about severe side effects by now. It was like the universe had left a present under a tree, and the tree was made of dead monkeys. I refined it right there in the ice, drawbacks and curse and all, and shipped the whole package off. It condensed into a second grotto, a Tao Ti Dharma image, extraordinary rank, and the technique that came with it, the Tao Ti treasure technique, is the one that changed everything for me, so pay attention. It devours. Whatever power comes at me, whatever's around me, an enemy's own attack, it swallows it down and spits it back as mine. There's a backlash that shreds your own body if you overload it. There's a hard ceiling where pushing past it just kills you. To me, the Tao Ti was not a bone. It was a mailbox that could eat a punch. I looted 13 more treasure bones off the ape graveyard on my way out, one of them a 5th tier piece from a nether void beast, and I checked my panel. 5 side effects now. The waste bone, the counterfeit pills, dragon subduing, 7 emotions, and the Tao Ti curse. And the cap had grown to match, from 1 target to 5. 5 slots. I filled them thoughtfully, the way you'd seat guests at a dinner you were planning to ruin. Zhao Jian kept his chair, obviously. I added Zhang Chen, the 7th ranker who slapped me with a martial skill that just slipped, and Gao Yun, 2nd place, who'd been so generous with his advice about my hopeless future. That made 3 names on a 5-name list. I left Li Meiling off. For now. I told myself it was strategy. It might even have been. Here is where I have to tell you about the funniest afternoon of my life, and I want to be clear that I only watched it. I take no responsibility. I was simply present. There is a Tianyi Hall in the Holy Land, a medical hall, run by an elder named Zhou Ming, a greedy little man who wears his medical ethics the way a butcher wears an apron, which is to say, to keep the blood off his good clothes. And that night, one by one, my 3 dinner guests came to see him. Zhang Chen arrived first, writhing, his organs on fire and his meridians unraveling, unable to explain why. Zhou Ming poked at him, checked 6 kinds of pulse, and declared it a rootless disease, undiagnosable, tragic. Then the door opened and Gao Yun walked in, doubled over with the exact same symptoms, and Zhou Ming's eyes lit up the way a man's eyes light up when a coincidence turns into a business opportunity. Then the door opened a 3rd time and Zhao Jian was carried in unconscious, same rootless disease, and I swear you could hear the elder's greed purring. He sold each of them a rejuvenating spring pill on credit, 30,000 contribution points ahead, because his medical ethics did not permit him to let 3 suffering young men leave untreated, only to leave broke, and since their cultivation was ticking down in real time while they haggled, they paid, all 3 of them, 90,000 points, extracted from the flower of the Holy Land's youth by a man with the bedside manner of a loan shark. The best part, and I want you to savor this, is that the 3 of them compared notes, sat there in that hall, 3 top talents, and swore up and down that none of them was cultivating anything with side effects, all of them lying, all of them convinced they were the only one with a shameful secret. Zhao Jian stuck at Spirit C 7th, his resources burned, his saint seat cooling, and no one, anywhere, to blame. Because the man who did it was a name he'd already crossed off as finished. I did not laugh out loud. I want that on the record. I laughed on the inside, which is where all my best laughing happens these days. Then I met the girl whose quest I'd stolen, and it went about as well as you'd expect. Xu Ling, 7th-ranked quasi-holy daughter, had come to the mission hall to find out who took her ginseng job the day before her deadline, and she was in the middle of promising to break the thief's 3rd leg when the thief, me, walked up behind her holding 2 ginseng. She spun and threw a strike at me for staring, which was fair, and I slid it on Azure Phoenix speed, 3 after images, gone before her hand finished the arc. That stopped her cold. You could watch her recalculate in real time. Then she found out who I was. Lin Feng, Li Meiling's deadbeat, the famous simp, number 1. The one who'd bankrupted himself for a saintess who traded him for an ancient sacred body. Her whole face did an apology before her mouth caught up. I handed over the ginseng, collected my 1,500 points, and my 10,000 stones, and the favor she now owed me, and then, because I am not a saint yet, no matter what the contest says, I made her explain the word simp to my face, where the quasi-holy daughters had gotten it, exactly how they used it, the whole ugly little slur, out loud, before I'd let go of the roots. So, which do you prefer, I asked her while she was still red, a kiss or a hug to settle the favor? And then I waved it off before she could combust, because it was funnier to leave it there. She wasn't stupid, Xu Ling. Somewhere in that exchange, she'd felt my speed and done the math, and the math didn't come out crippled. She left looking at me like I was a smokescreen with legs, which, to be completely fair to her, I was. 10 days ran out, and the saint competition opened on Martial Duel Peak. I walked in with 3 caves, the 3rd one empty, and a reputation for being a corpse that hadn't finished falling over yet. The rivals were all there, sizing each other up. Zhao Jian arrived last and arrogant, fully recovered, because his backer on Goddess Peak had poured resources into him and shoved him from Spirit C 7th back to 9th over 10 frantic days. He looked around the peak like it already had his name on the deed. I got the single best greeting of my life on the way in. Number 80, a nervous kid who'd known me before all this, saw me coming and bowed on pure reflex. Senior brother Lin. Then he remembered I was supposed to be finished, and his whole face collapsed into apology. I told him not to worry about it. I've always thought instinct is more honest than gossip. Then Li Meiling arrived, as the newly named saintess, and the whole peak bowed like wheat in wind. Every quasi-saint child, every disciple, heads down. 2 people didn't bow. Zhao Jian, because he thought he was her equal, and me, because I was done bowing to her 13 years ago and just hadn't known it yet. The test came first, on the Wudao Stele, the stone that reads your combat rank. Combat rank runs in 9 stars per realm, and above that in forbidden tiers, where 1 forbidden means you can punch a full realm above yourself. Most of the field lit the stele up at 1 forbidden 3 to 5 stars, which is genuinely impressive for kids at Spirit C. Gao Yun stepped up and struck 1 forbidden 8-star with his 18 subduing dragon palms, and the crowd murmured. Then Zhao Jian hit 1 forbidden 9-star and grazed half-step 2 forbidden at Spirit C, and the murmur became a roar because that shouldn't be possible. I went last because nobody expected me to bother. A casual punch, half-hearted, just to see. 2 forbidden, 3-star, the roar stopped like someone had cut a wire. A full punch. 2 forbidden, 7-star, somebody dropped something. And then I laid the 7 emotions disturbing desire fist into the stone, the mad one, the one that scrambles a soul, and the stele rang out 3 forbidden, 4-star, 3 forbidden. Nobody in that competition was within a country mile of 3 forbidden. The peak went from silence to chaos. Zhao Jian, whose Spirit C 9-star had been the story of the day 60 seconds ago, marched up in a fury and tried to shatter the stele outright, and the stone read him 1 forbidden and declined to break. He stood there with his fist against a rock that had just decided he was ordinary, and this is the part that shows you exactly how a rumor eats a mind. Zhang Chen, bless his poisonous little heart, immediately explained me away. Combat rank inflates when your cultivation crashes, he announced, loud enough to carry, so a 3 forbidden reading just proved how far I'd fallen, probably to Spirit C 6th or 7th. And the crowd, wanting it to be true, believed him. Li Meiling believed him hardest of all because she was the one who'd handed me the poison, so of course I was crippled. It's very hard to see the truth clearly when you're standing on top of it. Then came the fighting, and the fighting is where the accounting got settled. Number 80 challenged first, out of nerves more than sense, and I ended it before he finished his stance. One after image and a whip kick, down. Then Zhang Chen strolled out, ranked 7th, feeling generous. He offered me 3 free moves. He would only defend, he said, to make it fair for the cripple. 3 free moves. I took one. I put the 7 emotions fist into him and watched his own feelings turn on him like dogs, watched him swing at enemies that weren't there, watched him bleed. When he was on the ground, I crouched down and asked him, politely, where the other 2 free moves had gone. He didn't have an answer. His face was too busy. Gao Yun came next, second in the whole Holy Land, and he opened his 9th grade Buddha Dharma image, which is the kind of thing that ends careers. I hit it once. 1. Punch. It came apart, and so did he, launched clean off the platform. 9th grade, I said, mostly to myself. Pathetic. I'd meant it as an observation. It landed as a threat. So I made the threat official. All of you, I told the rest of them. Attack together. Save us the time. Zhao Jian stepped out instead, alone, and told me I'd make a fine whetstone. I'll give him this, he came correct. The golden lotus phenomenon bloomed in his sea of bitterness. He drew out the mother cauldron of all things, his natal weapon. He threw the dark purple lesser divine thunder fist, and then he cracked open the big one, the 8 heavens dragon, the sacred body treasure buried in his ancient sacred body, a dragon of pure holy power that most people in that crowd would never even see in a lifetime. I opened the Taudi. The gluttonous mouth in my second grotto yawned wide, and I let the 8 heavens dragon fly straight into it, his clan's ultimate treasure, his bloodline's crown jewel, and I swallowed it whole and turned it around and gave it back to him with interest, and layered the 7 emotions on top so his own mind joined the ambush. Every drawback of every technique I'd cultivated that month, all 5 of them, hit the 3 names on my list at once. Somewhere off the platform, Zhang Chen and Gao Yun vomited blood in unison for reasons they'd never understand, and Zhao Jian's limbs crumpled under him like wet paper. That should have been the end of it, but Li Meiling broke the rules. She was a saintess. She wasn't allowed to intervene in a quasi-saint duel, and she did it anyway, flashing in with a palm strike to save the man she'd chosen, which was, from my point of view, an extremely kind thing for her to do, because it let me add a 4th name to the list without any of the guilt of choosing it. I opened the Taudi and drank her palm down too, and every side effect on the panel found a new mailbox, and the saintess of the Holy Land pulled back with her meridians quietly cracked, and her qi and blood quietly reduced, and her whole beautiful recovery quietly slowed, and no one saw a thing. Zhao Jian surrendered from the floor, choking out that he'd repay me 100-fold, which, given how repayment worked between us these days, was a genuinely alarming thing to promise. And then he demanded the one thing the Holy Land couldn't refuse a talent like him. A war of saints. The war of saints is fought in a secret realm, and the rules were simple. All 80 quasi-saint children go in, and whoever walks out is the saint. What it was designed to be was a brawl. What it turned into was a demonstration. They came at me all at once, the whole 80, which was exactly what I'd asked for. Do you know how you empty a bucket? You don't scoop it, you tip it over. I opened the Tao Ti and let them pour every technique they had into that endless mouth, and I tipped it all back over onto them in one wave. 60 some of them were teleported out of the realm in the first breath, ejected, defeated, done. The rest went in the second wave. Zhao Jian and Gao Yun and Zhang Chen came out the worst of anyone because they were still carrying my side effects and now they were carrying the reversal on top. I stood in the middle of the emptying realm and said the only thing that needed saying. I am the rightful saint of this holy land. Who disagrees? Nobody disagreed. It's hard to disagree from another dimension. Li Meiling had been watching from the edge, where the saintess is allowed to watch, and a stray thread of the Taoti's backlash caught her midair and dropped her. She fell toward me, and here is the part I remember most clearly because it told me who I'd become. She opened her arms as she fell. 13 years of instinct told her that if she fell, I would catch her. I always had. I stepped back and let her hit the ground. I'm not proud of how good it felt. I'm also not going to pretend it didn't. She landed bleeding at my feet, looking up at me like the world had changed shape, and it had. And I just looked back like I was looking at a stranger, because by then, I mostly was. The quasi-holy daughters, on the other hand, were thrilled. Zhang Shui ranked first among them, Mo Qing ranked second, my ginseng acquaintance Xu Ling ranked 7th, all suddenly finding the newly minted saint very interesting now that he'd stopped throwing his life away on someone else. They made their overtures. I turned every one of them down, gently, because none of it was their fault. Even now that I'm a saint, I told them, I'll only ever be one person's. I just spent 13 years being blind about which person. I'm not in a hurry to be blind again. Holy Lord Duan Li conferred the title that afternoon. 981st Saint of the Tai Xuan Holy Land. There have been a lot of us. I intended to be memorable. Being a saint pays 100,000 spirit stones a month and 2 free hours a month in the Tai King pool, which is the kind of concentrated spiritual water that opens grottos if you can survive sitting in it. I survived it. Opened my 4th and 5th caves, up to Cave Heaven realm proper, and I did some shopping with all my new money because I had plans that required side effects at industrial scale. First though, I checked on my dinner guests. Zhao Jian, Gao Yun, and Zhang Chen had all washed into Tianyi Hall after the war, half dead and rootless diseased. And Elder Zhou Ming, that beautiful greedy monster, had sold each of them another miracle pill on credit. 73,000 contribution points ahead this time. Then he reported the debts to the discipline pavilion, so all 3 were functionally under house arrest until they paid. I had never loved a man I'd never met quite so much. He'd found the perfect business model. Sell healing to men whose sickness would never end. I sent him no thank you note. He'd earned it though. Then, the black market again, and a shop I'd remember for the rest of my life. Mo Dan's back room had a new supplier, an alchemist named Wen Zhong, who made a forbidden thing called the burning essence pill. What it does is burn your own lifespan and life essence to force a cave heaven open. Suicidal for a normal cultivator. I ordered 100 of them custom and he threw in 10 free, and as I left he said something I didn't understand yet, that we'd meet again, someday, in a different capacity. Filed it away. I file everything. I also picked up 1,000 more counterfeit gathering QI pills, because a man in my situation goes through side effects like a man in the desert goes through water. Back at the treasury, I chose 2 more techniques, and by now the elders had stopped trying to talk me out of it and simply watched me pick the worst ones like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. The Reverse 4 Extremes Force, a cultivation art that cripples one of your limbs for a full week per level and drains your potential like a slit wineskin, and in exchange shatters the yin-yang balance of an enemy's body from the inside. And the Heavenly Illumination Heart-Burning Palm, an Amaterasu flame that burns straight through heart and bone, whose price is that you set your own soul on fire to throw it. 2 more disasters, 2 more mailboxes worth of pain, addressed elsewhere. Last stop, the weapons hall, where Elder Xianxia kept the cursed rack. I took the Demon Seed Sword, half a heaven-grade weapon, with a ghost face grinning up the blade, and a curse that feeds a heart demon which splits its wielder's soul clean in 2. The elder asked me, one professional to another, whether I understood what a split soul does to an ancient sacred body specifically. I told him I was very curious to find out. Because if you split an ancient sacred body in 2, which half is stronger? I intended for Zhao Jin to answer that question for me, eventually. I want to tell you the strangest part, and then we can leave the Holy Land behind. Because there was one thing I hadn't understood, and it came out sideways. Over on Goddess Peak, Li Meiling was going quietly out of her mind. Her meridians were cracked, her chi and vitality were draining, and there was a heart demon's shadow snarling at the edges of her thoughts, all of it rootless, undiagnosable, the same disease as 3 men she didn't know she was linked to, and in the middle of that private hell she let something slip that I hadn't known. She was like me, a transmigrator. Woke up here one day remembering a water blue planet, same as I remembered mine, and that explained everything about the betrayal, honestly. She hadn't done the math on me and Zhao Jian the way a girl chooses between 2 boys. She'd done it the way a reader chooses which character survives. Ancient sacred body, that's a protagonist's physique, she'd decided. Lin Feng, the devoted childhood friend who gives away everything and gets nothing, that's a stepping stone, a villain even. So she'd stepped on the stepping stone and reached for the protagonist, coldly, on purpose, because she thought she already knew how the story ended. She thought she was the female lead. She thought Zhao Jian was the male lead. She'd bet her whole life on being right about a book nobody had written yet. I found out later she used to whisper it to herself for comfort. I'm the female lead. The male lead is Zhao Jian, not Lin Feng. Say it enough times and maybe it's true. It was not true. But I let her keep saying it for a while because the Calamity Ancient City was about to open in the southern region and I had somewhere to be. The Calamity Ancient City is one of those ruins that the whole world circles like sharks the moment it surfaces. Holy lands, ancient families, demonic sects, everyone sends their best young talent to strip it. I went in masked, because a saint of the Tai Xuan Holy Land wandering a free-for-all ruin makes a very attractive target, and because I'd learned my lesson about people knowing my name. First thing I did was put down a pack of mercenary bandits shaking down the entrance with a single Amaterasu palm, the heart-burning flame, which burns through a man's bones from the inside and costs me a slice of my own soul to throw, except it doesn't because I mail the soul burning to Zhao Jian. Then I found a quiet hot spring valley, and this is important for later. I found a woman in it. She was healing. Someone had ambushed her badly, and she'd gone to ground to recover, and she was, and I want to be precise about this because it matters, unbelievably beautiful. Robes whiter than snow, the kind of face that makes smart men do stupid things. I did not do a stupid thing. I turned around and left, politely, like a gentleman, because I had a full plate of enemies already, and did not need to add a stranger's grudge to it. What I didn't know yet was that she was Mo Yue, the saintess of the Yaoguang Holy Land, and that a Netherworld first-grade hall envoy called Crimson Shadow was the one who'd put her on the ground, chasing her over a marriage demand from their mysterious young master. And I also didn't know she'd be falling into my arms within the hour, because the universe has a sense of humor, and its favorite joke is me. I refined the demon seed sword down in that valley while I had the piece, bonded it to myself as its master. The heart demon curse that comes with it, the one that splits a soul in two, peeled off and went straight to my 4 mailboxes, and somewhere across the world, Zhao Jian and Gao Yun and Jiang Chen and Li Meiling all clawed at their own heads at once, screaming at nothing. I felt the sword's ghost face grin against my palm. We were going to get along. Then the hunt started for real, and everyone came out to play. Qian Hao, the divine king body of the Tianchu Luo family, a genuine monster. The Yaoguang Holy Sun, walking on a map of stars, Netherworld's envoys, golden arrows dropping bystanders left and right, and Mo Yue, still hunted, still running, ran straight down the corridor I happened to be standing in. She asked me to team up. I said no. Very firmly, "You are not my problem, fairy. Please take your assassins elsewhere." And then a golden arrow came around the corner, and she stumbled and fell, and my body moved before my principles could stop it. And I caught her, and I carried her, on Azure Phoenix speed, deep into the ruins with the whole Netherworld pack howling behind us. When we were safe, I set her down and got the full picture, and I nearly walked into a wall. Yaoguang's Saintess. I was a Taishuan saint carrying a rival Holy Land saintess through a ruin like a groom over a threshold. So I did the mature thing. I put her down and informed her that we didn't know each other, had never met, and that if anyone asked, this whole rescue was a case of mistaken identity. She did not appreciate my clarity. I left anyway. Meanwhile, the real predator of the Calamity City wasn't any of the famous names. It was a pale, quiet young man called Shi Lei, a child of Calamity, a descendant of the old Lord of Calamity, and the actual owner of the ruin's crown jewel, a thing called the Calamity Tower. Shile didn't explore. He didn't fight for scraps. He simply arranged the keys so that every top talent in the city, the saint, the saintess, Qian Hao, 4-star envoys, all of them, walked into the Calamity Tower's forbidden zone at once. And then he shut the door. Chains, every one of them bound. Their cultivation poisoned, their blood drained, the strongest young talents of a generation strung up like meat while a pale boy watched. He was a farmer, Shile. They were the crop. I walked in through the front. Here's the thing about a place that poisons your cultivation and drains your blood. It works by feeding you a curse, and I do not keep curses. Whatever the tower tried to put into me, my system peeled off and shipped out before it reached my sea of energy. So while a dozen of the most powerful young cultivators in the world hung there helpless, I strolled through the killing floor untouched, hands in my sleeves, and Shilei's face did something I would come to treasure. I hit him with everything at once. Azure Phoenix speed to get behind him, Taudi to swallow the Calamity Tower's ambient power, reverse 4 extremes to crack his balance, Amaterasu to burn. And before my palm even landed, Shilei vomited blood, because the reverse 4 extremes was already shattering the yin-yang inside him from a distance. There's an old saying for hitting a target you're not even touching, striking the ox on this side of the mountain. Shilei learned it the hard way, doubled over, spitting red, an entire hit behind a fight he thought he was winning. He fled, burning, when the Amaterasu caught him. Crimson Shadow tried to trap me in an illusion on his way out, and the Demon Seed sword shredded it like wet paper. And I helped myself to the tower's first prize, the Slaughtering Heaven Holy Intent, a sword intent pulled straight out of a grave, one of the 3 great opportunities in the whole ruin. My cap ticked up to 20, 5 side effects used, 15 slots open, and I walked deeper into the Calamity Tower for the second prize. The second prize was the 9 Calamities scripture carved on an ancient stele on the first floor. I took it, which is to say it entered me, because a stele legacy is a one-time thing, read once and gone forever. Around the time I finished, the tower's curse weakened enough that every bound talent tore loose, and every one of them realized at the same moment that some masked nobody had strolled in and taken everything, and they all came after me at once. I went up. The tower's second floor was a snowy plain, and it had a guardian, a chunky, one of the old calamity beasts, a thing of heart-eating fire and soul-separating ice. I killed it and looted its bone, my third Dharma image, and the chunky treasure technique with it. Then Xianhao and the Saint and the Star Envoys caught up and cornered me, and every one of them threw a heaven-grade weapon at me, and I opened the Taudi and drank the weapons down, swept them all with a single arc of the Demon Seed sword, and left through the hole in their formation. Mo Yue caught me on the way out, asked me quietly whether I was the Taishuan saint. I told her a saint would never carry a strange woman through a ruin, so clearly not. She almost smiled, and then for reasons I still don't fully understand, she told me her name, Mo Yue. I hadn't asked. I filed it away with everything else, and I ran. Outside the city, I found a hot spring valley of my own to catch my breath and cash in what I'd stolen. Refined the chunky bone into my third Dharma image. Swallowed 10 of Wenzhong's burning essence pills. Burned a decade of lifespan I didn't pay for, and cracked open my 6th cave, and I finally sat down and read what I'd taken. The 9 Calamities scripture doesn't just open grottos. It opens them with the power of calamity itself, which is a road to a 7th cave, and further, and which was about to make my life very complicated because a person who cultivates calamity becomes, in the eyes of the heavens, something the heavens would prefer did not exist. 4 caves that morning, 6 by nightfall, cap at 25, 3 names still on the list, and 2 of those 3 names were about to have a very bad day because the burning essence pill has a side effect too, and I'd forgotten to warn them on account of not caring. The burning essence pill burns lifespan and life essence. When you take 10 of them at once and route the cost onto 2 men whose lifespans were never built to pay it, those 2 men catch fire. Gao Yun and Zhang Chen burned from the inside all at once on opposite ends of the Holy Land, and they died. I'd known both of them for years. I'd competed with them, been mocked by them, been slapped by one of them for the crime of surviving a poisoning. And when word reached me that they were gone, I felt the exact amount of grief you'd expect a man to feel for the people who came to his sickbed to gloat. I noted it. I moved on. The Holy Land shook, called it evil forbidden cultivation, and started looking for someone to blame. Zhao Jian didn't die, because an ancient sacred body is very hard to kill, but he clutched his chest and doubled over hard, and the heart demon I'd seated in him snarled coward at him in his own voice, and his master, Master Zhao of Martial Dual Peak, found the split in his soul and started to have doubts. Doubts he swallowed, because he still wanted something from Zhao Jian badly enough to keep a cracked weapon on the rack. I'll get to what. Killing 2 famous talents does not go unnoticed. The Netherworld First Grade Hall wanted my head because I'd embarrassed their envoys in the Calamity City, and their young master, a name whispered like a curse, Yan Luo, was furious that 6 of his star envoys had come home empty-handed, and the Yaoguang Holy Sun wanted my head specifically because I had his 9 Calamities scripture, and he sent 30 Soul Palace assassins to take it back out of my corpse. So I did what a 6th cave cultivator does against 30 Soul Palace killers. I ran on foot through the Yan Kingdom at night, and they caught up to me anyway. And here's where the story does something I didn't plan for, because while I was being hunted, so was she. Li Meiling was falling apart. My side effects were eating her from the inside, the essence drain and the heart demon both, and she couldn't heal, so she'd fled the Holy Land to recover somewhere quiet, and quiet turned out to be a trap. A saint of the Joyous Union sect named Liu Qing, a greasy predator who collected beautiful cultivators the way other men collect wine, spotted a wounded saintess traveling alone and decided she'd look good in his collection. He chased her across 2 kingdoms, cornered her in an inn in the Yue capital with 5 Soul Palace elders at his back, and closed in to take her. She fought. Wounded, half-drained, 1 crack away from a shattered Dao heart, she still reached for the core art of our Holy Land. Dao follows nature, the one only a saint or saintess can wield, and she held them off for exactly as long as a cornered woman can hold off 6 killers, which is not long enough. I don't know exactly why I turned aside. The 30 assassins on my own trail were converging on the same city, so I could tell myself it was tactical, that I was just leading my hunters into Liu Qing's mess to thin the field. That's the version I prefer. The truer version is that 13 years doesn't wash out of a man in 1 betrayal, no matter how cleanly he thinks it did. I arrived as Liu Qing's hand closed on her, and I put every name on my list to work at once. 30 assassins, 5 Joyous Union elders, 1 Liu Qing, and I moved them all to the front of the queue for my side effects, and then cut through them like a scythe through a wet field. Amaterasu, Taioti, reverse 4 extremes, the Demon Seed sword. When it was over, the inn was empty of everyone but me, her, and the quiet, and I'd broken through to Cave Heaven 5th layer on the backlash of it. Killing 36 people at once is, among other things, excellent cultivation. Li Meiling looked up at me from the floor with an expression I didn't have a word for. Hope, maybe. Regret. The face of someone who's just been caught by the person they threw away. If I'd known it would ache this much to watch, I told her, I might not have come. And then, because I am not a saint no matter what my title used to say, and because I needed her to understand exactly where we stood, I said the other thing. From this day, you and I have no further connection. And I took her off the list. Quietly. Not as mercy, exactly. As bookkeeping. Her rootless wounds stopped getting worse from that hour, and she'd never know why. I left her in that inn and walked out into the dark. Behind me, I heard her rebuild her own heart the only way she knew how, brick by rationalizing brick. He's still not the one. Zhao Jian is the chosen one. The ancient sacred body is the protagonist. She'd bet her life on a story, and she was going to keep paying that bet down to the last coin rather than admit the odds were wrong. It's the most human thing I ever watched anyone do. I still didn't turn around. Back at the Holy Land, meanwhile, they'd found their someone to blame, and it wasn't going to be Zhao Jian. Gao Yun and Zhang Chen's deaths got pinned on evil forbidden cultivation, which was technically accurate and completely backwards. The goddess peak master, a saint lord called Zhao Ruo, seized the moment. She banned every accelerant and side effect pill in the Holy Land, shut down the black market suppliers, and demoted 70% of the disciples who'd ever touched an accelerant, which was most of them. An act of collective punishment so unjust it made even the other elders wince. Mo Dan's shop got shuttered, and Wen Zhong, my forbidden alchemist, got expelled. Before he vanished, though, Wen Zhong left me a jade slip, and reading it was the first time I felt the shape of a much larger board under my feet. Collect 100 burning essence pills, it said, at a place called the End of the World 1 month from now, and take the 3 boxes from my cellar, the 3 killer pills he'd left me. A demon appearance pill that upgrades a dharma image by letting an inner demon eat your soul. A soul separating pill that gives you a perfect soul palace by scattering the soul that's already there. A life-death reversal pill that is, plainly, poison. 3 useless pills in his words. 3 of the most useful things I would ever own, in mine. There was that phrase again in the slip, we'll meet in a different capacity, and I still didn't know what it meant. I would. And then the Holy Land I'd bled for finished the job Li Meiling had started. Zhao Jian came back. His ancient sacred body had a trick I hadn't accounted for, a sacred battle dharma body that could take the curse for him, wear my side effects so the main body didn't have to. So he stabilized, won his own war of saints against a field that no longer had me in it, and Zhao Ruo moved. She called a vote of the 18 peaks, stripped the 981st saint, the demon cultivator whose forbidden arts had killed 2 talents, elevate Zhao Jian in his place, and she got it. 13 peaks to 5, and I want to explain why, because it wasn't really about me. There's a thing in the ancestral forbidden land the whole Holy Land wants, an incantation, and the only kind of body that can survive going in to fetch it is an ancient sacred body. So 13 peaks looked at a nepotism play dressed up as justice, understood exactly what it was, and voted for it anyway because they wanted the prize more than they wanted to be fair. I was stripped of my title in a single afternoon, and it barely made me blink, because a title people can give you is a title people can take, and I was already looking past it. Zhao Jian, riding high, challenged me on the spot. Fight me now, ex-saint. Settle it in front of everyone. I looked at Zhao Ruo, then at Master Zhao, then at the 13 peaks who'd sold their honor for a scavenger hunt, and I gave the only answer that fit. I dare not accept. A beat. My surname isn't Ye. You could hear it land. Because it named the thing nobody was supposed to name, that Zhao Jian wasn't rising on his own strength, he was being carried by a goddess peak master who shared his family name and her own agenda. The crowd's mood turned in real time. Their new saint stopped looking like a champion and started looking like a puppet with a familiar face, and there was nothing he could do about it because it was true. That should have been my exit. It wasn't, because the transmission elder had other ideas. He was one of the 3 old ancestors of the Holy Land, an old man called Kui who ran the Hidden Merit Pavilion, and he'd been quietly on my side the whole time for reasons I didn't fully understand. He pulled me aside and told me 2 things. First, that Zhao Ruo was no ordinary peak master. She was of the ancient Ye family of Zhongzhou, the true center of the world, and she needed an ancient sacred body and coveted the incantation for reasons of her own. And second, that he was sending me into the ancestral forbidden land too, off the books, to comprehend the incantation myself. Get it, he said, and no one can keep you from being saint again. I picked one more technique on the way in, because of course I did. The heaven-slaying sword-drawing technique, whose side effect is that every time you draw the sword, it cuts you first, invisible sword kai, carving up your own insides, accumulating until it detonates. To me, one more mailbox. Then the 3 old ancestors and the 18 peaks opened the forbidden land, and 3 of us went in. Me, Zhao Jian, and Li Meiling. Inside, the air itself was devilish qi, the kind that decays your life just by breathing it. Everyone else had to ration their time. I let the Tao tea drink it so I could have stayed in there for a year. I put down a lingering demonic soul, the leftover will of some 88th generation Holy Master's skeleton, and I went looking for what we'd all come for. Zhao Jian found it first, or found what he thought was it, a golden swastika, glowing on an old stone, the fighting word true incantation. He comprehended it, and it's not nothing, it's a real technique. Li Meiling didn't get the incantation at all, but she used the devilish qi and her Tao follows nature to crack open her 7th cave, which is genuinely rare, 7 grottos, and she walked out first to a chorus of praise, admitting quietly that the incantation had eluded her. They both thought that was the whole prize. It wasn't, because deeper in, past where anyone bothered to look, there was a second tombstone, the second ancestors, and on it, a black swastika. The golden one Zhao Jian took is the fighting word true incantation, and it's a good technique. The black one is the fighting character magic verse, and it is not a technique, it's a cheat code. 100% success rate always, on anything. And 100-fold amplification of your combat power, no ceiling, stacking without limit. As I stood in front of that stone, a vision of the second ancestor rose off it and spoke 6 words that rearranged my spine. Slay immortals, suppress Buddhas, slay gods and demons. There was a price, naturally. Every time I used it, it cost 100 years of lifespan and drained chi, vitality, and soul. Which is to say, it cost a side effect. Which is to say, it cost me nothing, because I have never in my life paid a side effect I could mail somewhere else. I comprehended it standing there, the true version, while the whole world outside congratulated Zhao Jian for the knockoff. He came out and demonstrated his golden incantation, fumbled the 1 in 1,000 success it actually has, and the peak celebrated anyway and gave him his conferment, and his sacred battle dharma body kept right on quietly wearing my curse for him. Golden swastika, 100-fold failure, black swastika, 100-fold everything. They gave the saint's seat to the man with the counterfeit and threw away the man with the original. I was starting to think this Holy Land had a real problem telling the difference. I was about to stop being their problem entirely. Still inside the Forbidden Land, alone, I sat down and cultivated the 9 calamities scripture and opened my 7th cave with the power of calamity itself, a black grotto, a calamity grotto, and the sky noticed. Heavenly condemnation lightning came down on me right there, because that's what the 9 calamities does to you. It makes you a child of heavenly condemnation, a person the heavens have decided is a mistake and would like to correct. Which sounds bad, and mostly is, except for one detail the scripture buries in its own fine print. Once you've been condemned enough times, the lightning stops being a punishment and starts being a snack. I ate it. And somewhere far below me, something ancient woke up and decided it liked the smell. It called me down through the stone, and at the bottom of the Forbidden Land I found the last old 9 netherhound. The head of the archaic 10 fiends, the beast from before the world, was the shape it is now, and it was dying, the very last of its kind, and it had been waiting a very long time for someone the heavens hated as much as it did. It gave me 2 things, its nether bone, and a small black egg, its final offspring, with instructions to hatch it. I refined the bone into a 4th Dharma image, and this one wasn't extraordinary rank like the others. It was forbidden rank, a whole tier above, a hound that devours tribulation lightning and can turn everything living into everything dead. 7 caves now. 3 transcendent images and 1 forbidden one, and a combat ceiling, with the magic verse layered on top, that I can only describe as 9 forbidden, which is a number that shouldn't exist for a person at my realm. I'd walked into that Forbidden Land a demoted ex-saint. I was about to walk out of it as something the world didn't have a filing category for. Except when I climbed back up, the world had already filed me, under deceased. Zhao Ruo hadn't waited. I'd been declared dead in the Forbidden Land and expelled posthumously, and by the time I reached my old peak, Zhao Jin's disciples were carrying my furniture out of it, and Zhao Jin himself was there, ready to take his 100-fold revenge on the corpse that had the nerve to still be walking. He opened with the fighting word true incantation, the golden knockoff, the real technique. I let him. And then I took his sacred battle dharma body apart, the thing that had been wearing my curse this whole time, cracked it open in front of everyone and added it to my list as its very own separate mailbox, so now the split Zhao Jian could suffer in 2 places at once. A man with the true incantation, thrashed by a man everyone had buried, at a realm below him. The crowd stopped breathing. You could see them recalculating the entire last month. That was when Zhao Ruo came down personally. A Saint Lord's pressure is a different kind of weather, and I wasn't ready to fight one yet. So when she pinned me and declared me a demon arts criminal and had me thrown into the sky prison 3rd level, I let it happen. 3rd level is where they keep the things too dangerous for the 2nd. She thought she was burying me. She was, in fact, introducing me to my future, because there was already someone in the 3rd level of the sky prison. A blood-haired old man, half a face and a temper, who had been chained down there for 3,249 years. I'll give you his name the way I learned it later, the Silver-Mane Griffin Lord of the ancient heavenly devil Peng clan, a half-step great saint from 3,000 years back. And do you know what they'd locked him up 3 millennia for? Loving a woman. The 96th saintess of the Taishuan Holy Land, a girl named Mei. That's it. That's the whole crime. A demon and a saintess who liked each other. and the Holy Land buried him under the world for it and never let him out. I decided immediately that I liked this Holy Land less than I already did, which I would not have thought possible. He looked at my chains and my situation and did me the first genuine kindness anyone in that place had done me in a year. He told me how to get out. The third level's Great Seal is a bed of erosion azure blood soil, and under it runs an underground river, and if you can get through the soil, you can ride the river out. The catch is that nothing can survive touching that soil, nothing except a newborn 9-nether hound, whose favorite food is everything. I hatched the egg against the seal, and the little thing that came out ate the erosion soil like it was a birthday cake, chewed a hole straight through the Sky Prison's third-level seal, and dropped us both into the river below. And here's the part the old man planned for. The same seal that held the third level held him. Break it for me, and it broke for him too. He went out through his own end of it, a half-step great saint loose in the world for the first time in 3,000 years, owing me a favor, and carrying a very old grudge against the Holy Land that had jailed him for love. I have made a lot of transactions in my life. Freeing that particular old man is one I'll never regret. The river carried me for about a month in the dark, which I spent cultivating the strangest of the 9 calamities, the human calamity. And it carried something else too, because that egg had hatched all the way, and out of it came the single most important member of my new family. I called him Mo. He was, to be honest with you, a disaster. 9. Netherhound. One of the 10 most fearsome beasts in the history of creation, and he came out of the shell looking like a husky that had lost a fight with a paint set. A vertical blood-red eye between his brows, scales, a red mane, 9 little tails with a lump on the end of each, and an appetite that recognized no distinction between food, treasure, and the load-bearing structure of wherever we happened to be standing. He devoured tribulation lightning, he devoured spirit herbs. Given the chance, I'm fairly sure he'd have devoured the concept of Tuesday. And within a month of leaving the shell, he'd already grown from something the size of 2 basketballs to something the size of a full-grown husky, because apparently the archaic 10 fiends do not believe in gradual. He also decided, on no evidence and with total conviction, that I was his. Bonded to me like family, followed me, slept on my chest, ate my problems, sometimes literally. In a story that is mostly about people who wanted things from me, Mo was the first creature in a long time who just wanted me. I did not undersell how much that was worth. While we drifted, the world above churned. The Netherworld First Grade Hall was hunting talents everywhere. A demon prince called the Golden Pang was rampaging through the west, and a rumor was catching fire that the inheritance of the Empress, the most terrifying female ruler in the history of everything, had surfaced somewhere in a place called the Tongtian River. Our little underground river, as it turned out, fed into that one. I felt the seal at the far end break open, and the current started pulling me somewhere I very much wanted to go. The Tongtian River is not really a river. It's a scar in the world where the Empress left her legacy, and the whole board had come to fight over it. Netherworld star envoys, 5 of them this time, the Shadow Blade One at their head, trying to sweep the area clear. Qin Yuan of the ancient Feng family trading blows with the Shadow Blade. Qian Hao, the Thunder Punishment Holy Son, the Shakelight Son and Daughter, the Xixia Holy Maiden, the Golden Pang Prince, the Yaoguang Saint, and his Saintess Mo Yue, Li Meiling, Shi Lei. Every heavyweight of a generation, all crowded onto the banks of a river that had started to boil, waiting for the door to open. The door opened, and while all of them were still on the outside working out who got to go first, I was already in because the current had carried me in the back way, and the demon seed sword in my hand had started trembling and dragging me toward a palace that had no business existing. It was the Empress's heavenly court. I want to convey the scale of this, because it recalibrated my entire sense of the world. Inside, in a frozen illusion, the great emperors themselves, the ceiling of what anyone in this era even dreams of becoming, were kneeling, not ruling, kneeling, as subjects, as minor star lords, heads bowed to a single empty throne at the top of the hall, the most powerful beings in history, arranged as footmen around an empty seat. I stood in the doorway of that, and understood, for the first time, that the ladder I'd been climbing had rungs above it I couldn't even see. And then the demon seed sword tugged me toward a side hall, because it had smelled something, and I let it lead. Outside, the race was on. The Yao Guang Holy Sun unfurled 63 ninth-grade Dharma idols at once, which is the kind of thing that ends conversations. And Shi Lei, my pale friend from the Calamity City, was tracking me personally, because a child of calamity can smell a human calamity, and I'd just spent a month cultivating one in the dark. The side hall held a nameless tablet on a cliff, and when I touched it, a fragment of the devouring heaven magic art poured into me. Not the whole art, just the piece that matters most to a man like me, the piece that opens grottos past their natural limit by eating creation itself. I took the tablet and ran and deflected a sneak attack from the Yaoguang Saint on my way out, and then 4-star envoys cornered me in the open, and I decided it was time to show these people what the black swastika does. I looked at the 4 of them, 3 women and the sun-chasing envoy, and I did some out-loud math. You're all candidates to be the young master's favorite, I said. If one of you dies here, that's just more resources for the other 3, so which of you wants to be generous? You could watch the idea land and take root. Then I named Ma Long, the sun-chasing envoy, put him at the front of my mailing list, drew the heaven-slaying sword with the magic verse behind it, 100-fold, and took both his arms off and lit his heart demon at the same time, and the 3 women I'd just poisoned the well. With looked at their dying colleague, calculated exactly what I'd told them to calculate, and abandoned him where he lay to go chase the Yaoguang Holy Sun instead because his resources were still on the table and Ma Long's weren't. I hadn't beaten 4-star envoys, I just reminded them what they were and let them scatter, then I ran. In a coral forest deeper in, I found Shilei again, and this time he was fighting Mo Yue. They were both after the same thing, a devouring sword hilt, half of a supreme emperor weapon, the empress's own sword. I arrived, put the magic verse into Shilei, carved 200 years off his lifespan in a single stroke, and would have finished him if the Calamity Tower hadn't scooped him up and fled with him again. That tower had saved his life twice now. I was starting to take it personally. The devouring sword hilt, meanwhile, took one look at the demon seed sword in my hand, recognized a sibling, and flew to me, tried to imprint on me as its master. Mo Yue watched half a supreme emperor weapon abandon her for me and made a sound I can only describe as murderous. What happened next is a story she has, to this day, made me swear never to tell, so naturally, I'm going to tell it. Mo Yue dragged me into her Earth Soul Palace secret realm, a place called the Guangan Palace, an old artifact of the Heavenly Court, to settle the matter of the sword hilt away from prying eyes. And there, I made a decision that was tactically sound and personally catastrophic. I ate one of Wenzhong's demon appearance pills. The pill upgraded my Azure Luan Dharma image to forbidden rank on the spot, which was the plan. What was not the plan, or rather what was very much the plan and I hadn't mentioned it, was that the upgrade drew a mutant double lightning tribulation, and I steered the whole thing into Mo Yue's sea of consciousness, where, as an outsider to her own soul realm, she took the damage several times over. It nearly killed her. It also nearly got her sword hilt for me, which, again, was the plan. I caught her before she fell. And then, in the tribulation source pool where the lightning essence pooled, while I was trying to keep an unconscious saintess from drowning in glowing liquid, and I need you to understand, this was an accident of physics and current, and grabbing at cloth in the dark, pulled off her undergarment. She woke up at exactly that moment. I have faced Saint Lords. I have eaten heavenly condemnation lightning for breakfast. I have never in my life been in as much danger as I was in the 3 seconds after Mo Yue's eyes opened. She bit me. She slapped me. She invented new expressions for her face, and I, being a reasonable man, offered her fair compensation. I gave her the devouring sword hilt, the half of a supreme emperor weapon I'd just risked my neck for, as an apology, and then I kept the undergarment, and I fled for my life. I want to be clear that I am not proud of this. I am, however, still in possession of it, so make of that what you will. And Mo Yue, for the record, did not forget my name after that. If anything, she remembered it with a great deal of feeling. The rest of the Tongtian River played out mostly without me, the way a good scheme should. Ma Long, the sun-chasing envoy, I'd left armless and heart demon-racked in the coral, spent his last breath making a threat against Qin Yuan's sister, a pure Kui body. Bad move. Qin Yuan found him dying and finished him, took his sun-chasing bow off the corpse, and the other star envoys, true to their nature, abandoned their dead colleague without a backward glance. Ma Long's master, a saint lord called the Dusk Lord, swore a very loud revenge and started talking about breaking the old rule against elders hunting juniors, right up until Yan Luo's shadow reminded him, coldly, to mind his limits. I filed all of it away, especially the part where the Netherworld's own people were terrified of their young master. Then there was the Emperor's seat. In the main hall, the Golden Peng Prince, the Shadow Blade Envoy, and Qian Hao were fighting over the Empress's throne itself, a saint weapon, and Qian Hao had turned on the Shadow Blade mid-brawl for his own reasons. And in the middle of their three-way war, the Emperor's seat did something none of them expected. It fled. Away from all 3 of them, across the hall, and attached itself to me because I was carrying the Empress's tablet, and apparently a throne knows its own furniture set. The Golden Peng Prince took exception. Touch it, he informed me, in the tone of a man used to being obeyed, and I'll exterminate your 9 clans. I don't have 9 clans, I barely have a dog, so I added him to the list, drew the heaven-slaying sword with the magic verse behind it, the 3rd time I'd spent 100 years of somebody else's lifespan that week, and I took his arm off and stomped him down into the riverbed like I was putting out a cigarette. I didn't kill him. Killing a demon prince in the open draws big shots, and I had smaller, cleaner plans. But I made sure the whole hall watched a boy from nowhere cripple the pride of the golden-winged Great Peng and walk off wearing the Empress's throne like a cloak. Then I left, and I left the way I like to leave, by making everyone else's problem worse. On my way out, I shouted a rumor to the crowd, loud and confident, that the Golden Peng Prince and the Shake Light Holy Sun had already made off with all the real treasures. Then I let the resulting stampede cover my exit while 100 angry cultivators redirected their greed at two people who'd done nothing. The Shake Light Holy Sun, understandably annoyed, sent 100 dead soldiers and 3 Nether Void elders after me for the slander. Small price. Slander is cheap and stampedes are free. I crossed the demon clan's 10,000 mountains over 3 days, Mo on my shoulder eating anything that moved, and came out on the coast of the North Nether Sea. And there, with the sea's raw creation energy at my back, I opened the tablet's gift. The devouring heaven fragment devours creation to force a grotto past its limit. I turned it on the North Nether Sea itself, ate a piece of the ocean's creation, and cracked my 8th cave. And it wasn't an ordinary grotto. It came in as a Taiji cave heaven, black and white, yin and yang folded into a single balanced whole, the devouring power and the creation power married inside it. 8 caves. And 8 caves, everyone who matters will tell you, is the mark of a body that could one day reach the great saint realm. I ate the lightning tribulation that came for it, because of course a lightning tribulation came for it. I'm the child of heavenly condemnation. They show up now like it's a subscription. And somewhere far behind me, the war between the Feng family and the Netherworld First Grade Hall was boiling over into a Saint Lord slugfest, the Dusk Lord and a Feng elder tearing at each other so hard they woke the Emperor Might sleeping in the Tongchen River itself. None of that was my problem yet. What was my problem was that I'd surfaced in the middle of demon country, an 8th cave human with a 9 netherhound and the Empress's throne, and the demons of the North Nether Sea were about to hold a party I very much intended to crash. The party was called the Heaven and Earth Peach Banquet, and like most parties in this world, it was a mugging with catering. 2 clans, the Kun clan and the Golden-Winged Great Peng, had cooked up the whole event as a way to strip a third, nearly extinct clan, the Sky Demon Peng, of their inheritance, a thing called the Kun Peng Yang Bone. The Sky Demon Peng were down to about 10 members and 1 desperate leader. It was the kind of lopsided robbery that makes me want to get involved on principle. I got involved because the blood-haired old man I'd freed from the Sky Prison turned out to be their long-lost ancestor, the Silvermane Griffin. Lord, 3,000 years old, half-step great saint, back from the dead, and now looking at me like I was the most convenient thing he'd found in an age. He explained the whole scheme, showed me his desperate descendants, and made me an offer. Be the Sky Demon Peng's outside help. And to sweeten it, he sent me into a place called the Eye of Hell, the yin-yang birthplace of the Kun Peng, to fetch a saint weapon hidden there. Inside the Eye of Hell, I ran into a complication named Qian Bing. She was Qian Hao's long-lost younger sister, a Tao spirit divine body, disciple of a half-step great saint, and she was in the Eye of Hell opening her own 8th cave, which is where our problem began. The place runs on a creation Kui-Yang bridge, and my Yang power and her Yin power linked across it whether we wanted them to or not, feeding each other, opening both our grottos at once. It's a very intimate thing, a yin-yang bridge, and neither of us had agreed to it, and both of us were, at the moment it connected, wearing considerably less than we'd have chosen for a first meeting. She was mortified. I was polite about it, which somehow made it worse. By the time we untangled, we'd both opened our 8th caves, and neither of us could look the other in the eye. 2 saint weapons rose out of the creation iron at the bottom, both forged from the same divine metal. The Yang one, the dragon-slaying blade, the Sky Demon Peng's ancestral weapon, came to me. The Yin one, an Azure Kun clan sword, went to Qian Bing. And when we climbed out, our masters were waiting for each other on the surface, because Qian Bing's teacher, Huo Ming, a half-step great saint of his own, and my new patron, the Silvermane Griffin Lord, had decided to sort out their generation's business the hard way. They fought, and it was the kind of fight that reshapes coastline. Qian Bing, watching her teacher and my patron try to kill each other, did something clever and slightly unhinged. She burst into tears and cried that I'd bullied her to make them stop. It worked, in that it stopped the fight, and it revealed, to her teacher's satisfaction and her own scarlet embarrassment, that she rather liked the boy who'd supposedly bullied her. Old Huo Ming had set the whole thing up as a test of exactly that. Both masters, in the course of the duel, pushed themselves to the 3 flowers gather on crown, the doorstep of the great saint realm. Meanwhile, off in his ancestral land, the Golden Peng Prince was being eaten alive by the heart demon I'd planted in him, held together only by his clan's ancestral spirits, unable to cut the curse loose without crippling one of his own grottos to do it. I'll admit I checked in on that one with a certain amount of satisfaction. Some mailboxes you like to watch. The Silvermane Griffin Lord took the dragon-slaying blade back into his own hands, handed the azure sword to Huo Ming, which made the old man a fresh enemy of the Kun clan, and then he and I set off for the banquet proper. On the way we ran into the Golden Pang Prince himself, out and about, still full of pride despite the inner demon gnawing his soul. I decided to play with my food a little before dinner. The Golden Pang Prince still thought he was somebody. He threw his clan's 10,000 swords technique at me, a sky full of feather blades, and I let the black vortex over my head drink every one of them. He drew the heaven-slaying sword's cousin, and I turned it around. He broke into his true form, an enormous golden bird that blotted out the sun, and I broke his wings and dragged him through the sea by them. My Azure Luan is forbidden rank now, and its speed is second to nothing alive, so from his point of view, he was fighting a man who was never actually where he was swinging. His friend Li Tai, young master of the Kun clan, made the mistake of stepping in, him too. I forced him back into his true Kun form, a black and white giant fish drooping in the waves, and I looked at the two of them, a Pang and a Kun, beaten side by side, and I couldn't help myself. One Pang, one Kun, I said. Real shame you two can't put your heads together and make a Kun Pang. They fumed so hard it worsened their injuries, which was the point. Then I chained them both, and I dragged them to Creation Island as party favors. I'd love to tell you my grand entrance was the highlight of the banquet. It was not, because 30 seconds after I dropped two bleeding demon princes onto the arena and announced I was fighting for the Sky Demon Pang, the Silvermane Griffin Lord arrived, and I stopped being the main character of my own scene. 3,000 years since anyone had seen him, and every Saint Lord on that island felt the weight of him the second his voice touched the air. He suppressed Gu Hong, an elder of the Golden Pang, pinned him to the ground in front of his whole clan, and then his black Sky Demon Pang domain closed over the man, and Gu Hong simply did not get up, a saintly being, gone, in a breath, in front of everyone. The whole island stopped breathing at once. Then the old man got theatrical. He revealed that he'd already walked into the Kun clan's ancestral land, alone, unharmed, and helped himself to their Kun Pang Yin bone, and he held it up, this gray-white runed bone, the core of a clan's identity, and announced that it was now the banquet's grand prize. Whoever could beat his junior, meaning me, would win the Yin bone and the right to enter the Sky Demon Pang's ancestral land for the Yang bone. The Kun clan's faces went the color of old meat, their inheritance, dangled as a raffle prize by the man they'd betrayed. Li Meifang, the Kun young master's sister, challenged first, insisting I'd only won by the old man's help. I palmed her, reverse 4 extremes under an Amaterasu, and that was the end of the argument. Taichu Holy Sun came next, a human Holy Sun grandstanding on demon turf, going all out with 7 caves and 63 idols. I ended him with one sword. Bro, he said, on his way down, spitting blood. You're really going all out, huh? Then, from the ground, I was too arrogant. The 5 elements Holy Sun tried after him and folded just as fast. Everyone else, the Twin Lion young master, the Zhang clan's silent king body, took one look at that and found something very interesting to study on the floor. Nobody beat me. Which meant the Yin bone stayed exactly where the Silvermane Griffin Lord had always intended it to stay, in his hand. He'd never meant to give it away. He just wanted to hold the Kun clan's soul up in front of the world and make them watch it become a party trick. Then he swept me and the last of the Sky Demon Pang off the island before anyone could work up the nerve to complain. At the Sky Demon Pang's ancestral land, he gave me the Yang bone to go with the Yin one. I fused them and watched the 2 broken halves become a single whole, cycling through every shape, 4 symbols, 5 elements, 6 harmonies, up and up until they settled into the true Kun Pang treasure bone, and I refined that into my Taiji cave, my second bone of the archaic 10 fiends, a Kun Pang Dharma idol, yin and yang balanced, and the Kun Pang treasure technique with it, an art built out of an old line about riding the correctness of heaven and earth and roaming the boundless. The Golden Pang ancestor, an old half-step great saint called Fakong, showed up with an elder to take the Kun Pang bone off me by force. The Silvermane Griffin Lord drew the dragon-slaying blade. One exchange. Fakong's inherited golden heaven scissors were outmatched, and both demons were already running. And the old man carved a 100,000-mile abyss into the sea behind them as a note to anyone else feeling ambitious. Nobody else felt ambitious. He threw me and Mo out of the ancestral land to finish our tribulations, and Mo, bless him, devoured most of the lightning meant for both of us and came out the other. Side at Spirit Sea, having decided that heavenly punishment was a food group. Before I left, the old man gave me 2 gifts, and both of them mattered. The first was a single black feather, with 3 dragon-slaying blade chi condensed inside it, each one carrying the killing power of a Saint Lord. Drop my name if you get in over your head, he said, and if that doesn't work, use the feather. The second gift was a piece of advice, and it rearranged my ambitions. 9 cavern, he told me. A 9th cave. It beats any physique in the world, because physiques have limits, and cave heavens don't. The strongest bloodline, the rarest divine body, all of it hits a wall eventually. 9 open grottos hit no wall at all. He'd give up any physique in creation for the chance at a ninth cave, he said, and he couldn't fully explain why, only that when you climb high enough you feel the shackles a special body puts on you, and a ninth cave has no shackles. I had 8. I was one grotto away from the thing an ancient demon king would trade the world for. I decided right there that I was going to open the 9th. I just didn't know yet that opening it would mean marrying a girl the heavens had already sentenced to death. While I'd been playing with demons, the human world had been busy tearing itself apart. The Dusk Lord had led the Netherworld First Grade Hall into the central region and exterminated more than 20 branches of the Feng family to avenge his dead disciple, turning a hunt into a massacre. The Shadowblade Envoy had broken through into the Heaven Soul Palace realm and used it to ambush and kill the Tianshuan Holy Sun, and the Tianshuan Holy Land, gutted and short a saint, was fending off vultures who'd come to strip its scripture while its saintess held the door. Her name was An Ning, and I want you to remember it, because I'll be spending a lot of my life on her before this is over. Veiled, plain-robed, so beautiful, the visiting Holy Sons forgot how to speak, and carrying a sorrow that made men want to fix things that weren't theirs to fix. She was, by the cruelest local joke, a widow, because the Tianshuan Holy Sun had died before he was ever really hers. I didn't know any of that yet. I just know now, telling it, that the day she stood alone in the doorway of a dying Holy Land is the day the road bent toward me, and there was one more piece moving on the board that I should mark because it turned out to be aimed at me. A pale, weak-looking young man revealed himself to the Netherworld's Crimson Shadow Envoy. The Forget River young master of the Naihe Gate, a demonic sect that makes the Netherworld look loud. He'd been sitting quietly inside my old Taishuan Holy Land the entire time, invisible, and nobody had felt a thing. He cut a deal to capture the Feng twins, for a price of a single drop of their heart blood, and he told the pure Kui Chin Mei something strange on his way out. That if she didn't want to end up in Yanlo's hands, exactly one man in the whole world could save her. Someone surnamed Lin. I didn't know that man was talking about me. I didn't even know the man existed. Hold on to him. He pays off. The Feng War ended the way these things always end. Everyone realized there was a bigger prize on the table. Because the whole eastern wilderness cracked open at once, space collapsing across the central region, and something rose up out of the wound. A restricted area, an ancient sealed world called the Great Dream Immortal Mausoleum. Its master, a living celestial venerable, threw open the doors and invited every young talent alive to a martial contest, and underneath that, a marriage recruitment. A celestial venerable, a being above a great saint, holding a bride hunt for his daughter. It made no sense to anyone, which is exactly why everyone went. Yao Guang Holy Sun, Qian Hao, all of them turned toward it like iron toward a magnet. Back home, meanwhile, the Taishuan Holy Land finally learned what it had done to itself. Zhao Jian was no longer Zhao Jian. When I'd fed him that demon appearance pill's backlash back in the Tongtian River, his soul had split, and the heart demon half had won, devoured the main soul's control, and taken the body. And a heart demon has no scruples the man ever had. To heal the rootless curses eating him, this heart demon started devouring the cultivation and life essence of the Goddess Peak's own disciples, draining them dry, murdering them for the power to keep himself alive. His master Zhao kept shielding him. Zhao Ruo's soul search found nothing because the heart demon had erased its own tracks. Until the third body turned up, and even they couldn't look away. They sentenced the thing wearing Zhao Jian's face to the Sky Prison's 3rd level, and when a Hidden Peak master proposed reinstating me instead, and Duan Li asked where I even was, the heart demon laughed and told them exactly where, that Zhao Ruo had secretly jailed me in the Sky Prison's 3rd level months ago. They rushed down to the 3rd level to save me and found it empty. No me, no erosion soil, no 3,000-year prisoner, just a hole where a seal used to be, and a broken sky prison, and the slow, horrible understanding that Zhao Ruo's petty vengeance had cracked open the cage of a half-step great saint who now hated their entire Holy Land. Duan Li stood over the empty pit and said the only true thing anyone said that day, that my fate was unknown, and that Taishuan had made itself an enemy it could not survive, and that it was her fault. She stood there in the wreckage of the cage she'd built for me, and swore that if I lived, she'd see me fall into her hands. I was, at that moment, drifting the North Nether Sea with a husky-shaped disaster asleep on my shoulder when the sky in front of me split. The void collapsed and swallowed me. One of 1,000 spatial cracks the restricted area's arrival had torn open, and while I was tumbling through the dark, a stone came out of nowhere and hit me in the chest hard enough to leave a dent. A 5-colored irregular stone, moving like it had been fired from a bow, and it knocked me clean out of the void and left me bleeding in the snow with no idea what had just happened. I didn't know it then, but that stone had chosen me. And it was dragging me, whether I liked it or not, toward the Great Dream Immortal Mausoleum, and toward her. The stone, it turned out, was a gift wearing the disguise of an injury. It sank into my dantian, settled itself among my 8 caves like a stone dropped in the center of 8 ripples, and started to glow, and within a quarter hour the crushing wound it had given me was gone, healed faster than my forbidden azure luan could have managed. A windfall in the shape of a mugging. I'd take it. I didn't get long to enjoy it, because the Golden Peng's old Peng Saint had come hunting, wanting the Kun Peng bone back and wanting me to fix his crippled prince, and a 7-step Saint Lord chasing a cave heaven boy is not a fair race. I ran on Kun Peng and Azure Luan, speed both, added him to the list so at least the magic verse could quietly saw a few centuries off his lifespan while he chased me, and when he finally cornered me, I did the only thing I could. I bluffed. I triggered one of the Silvermane Griffin Lord's dragon-slaying blade key from the Black Feather, and the old Peng felt that exact blade energy, remembered the abyss it had carved in the sea, and fled in outright terror, convinced the Eagle King himself had appeared. Mo burned the last of his strength, blasting apart the Peng's feather swords with a wave of pure death, and then, before I could catch my breath, the void collapsed and swallowed us both again. Inside the void there is no ground and no air, only spatial turbulence sharper than any blade, and a cave heaven cultivator does not survive it. So I did something I'm not sure I was allowed to do. I took out the Empress's emperor seat, and I sat on it. It fought me. A throne that once held the most terrifying ruler in history does not care to seat a cave heaven nobody, and it tried to throw me off. So I gripped the nameless tablet in one hand, and the tablet's ancient emperor might flowed up my arm and steadied me, and for one moment I saw her across the endless river of time, the Empress, staring back at me from a distance no living thing should be able to span, and I felt a grief and a grandeur that weren't mine, an ache for a supreme existence I'd never met, and a hunger to become one. And I told the throne, in a voice that borrowed her authority, to take me out, and it obeyed. It carried an unconscious man and an exhausted hound through the killing dark, and flung us out the far side into somewhere stable, somewhere sealed off from the world, and then it fled back into my ring like it wanted nothing more to do with me. I woke up in the great dream immortal mausoleum, which is where the whole shape of my life changed, though I'd have laughed if you'd told me so at the time. The mausoleum is a restricted area, a self-contained world ruled by a celestial venerable, the Great Dream Celestial. Getting into its heart means crossing a lake called the 7 Deaths, 7 Lives, where you live and die through dream after dream to temper your Tao heart, and one life inside a single dream can feel like 10,000 years. I skipped the lake. A fleeing throne had flung me clean past it, half dead in the grass, already inside, and the first face I saw there was not a face I was ready for. Mo had gone looking for help while I was out, and Mo has better instincts than I do because the help he found was her. She came in a carriage of gray-robed attendants, and when she stepped down, she was the kind of beautiful that recalibrates a room. Green robes, a face like something painted rather than born, ethereal in a way that didn't belong to the loud living world. But that wasn't what caught me. What caught me, once I could sense again, was the misfortune wrapped around her. A faint black aura, a heavenly xianxia, held back only by a string of Buddhist mani pearls on her wrist, 9 white beads, of which 8 had already gone black. She was someone the world had thrown away, someone the heavens themselves couldn't tolerate. She was, in other words, exactly like me. Mo had felt it too, that kinship, and led her to where I lay. She brought me onto her carriage, and I woke up healed, and I made the single worst opening move of my romantic career. I called her senior, her whole expression curdled. "I'm not much older than you," she said, offended. "Why would you call me senior?" I recalculated, a Saint Lord's aura on a face that young. Then, sister? I'm 19 years, 11 months, and 1 day old. She said it with total precision, autumn eyes fixed on me, daring me to say senior again. I did the math, panicked, and reached for a phrase from my old life. "Miss Sister?" She burst out laughing, covered her mouth, and finally put me out of my misery. "My name is Hua Lin. Hua Lin. Under 20, at the Saint Lord realm, a celestial venerable's daughter, and cursed." I thanked her for saving my life, and she corrected me, gently, that she hadn't saved anything. She just carried me onto a cart, and I'd healed on my own. I was a cave heaven boy who had walked into a restricted area's marriage hunt by pure accident, sitting across from a woman who could kill me by breathing wrong, and every instinct I had said to get off that carriage before I said something else stupid. So I got off. I thanked her, I bowed, and I climbed down and walked away, telling myself I'd find a quiet corner of this restricted area, grab whatever opportunity was going, and leave. I did not, at that point, understand that I just met the woman I would go through 100 lifetimes to keep. I hadn't walked far before someone tried to kill me over the stone in my chest. Qin Yuan, the pure yang body of the Feng family, had been dumped into the mausoleum by the same spatial chaos that got me, and his bloodline was screaming at him that I was carrying something that belonged to his clan. He ambushed me from behind, which is a poor way to introduce yourself, and I beat him twice for it. Then an old man appeared under a 10,000-year peach tree, an old man I'd later learned to call Longui Grandpa, and offered to guide 2 sword users to a place where sword chi ran wild. On the way there, Qin Yuan attacked me a 3rd time and activated his Nuwa Dao scripture, and the scripture reached into my dantian and dragged the 5-colored stone out into the open, and Qin Yuan's eyes nearly left his skull, because the stone was the Feng family's lost supreme treasure, the Nuwa heaven-mending stone. The same Nuwa who patched the sky in the myths of my old world, apparently, because the universe has a sense of humor about these things. So I really had stolen something of his, entirely by accident, when it shot out of the void and dented my chest. I broke his heavenly flaw holy intent with the 9 Netherhounds netherworld transformation, told him to get lost, and kept the stone. It had already saved my life twice. I wasn't handing back my best insurance policy to a boy who kept swinging at my back. Then I walked into the grass sea, and the grass sea changed me. It's a field of grass where every blade is a sword chi thick enough to taste, and in the depths of it, I fell into a vision. A single blade of grass, alone through eons, star rivers turning, seas becoming fields, suns rising and dying, and that one small blade unchanged, and then a day when the 9 heavens collapsed and the whole starry sky began to die, and the little blade of grass woke up and cut. Grass was sword. A single blade of grass cut down the sun, the moon, and the stars. Behind me, without my willing it, my 8 caves unfurled, and all 5 of my Dharma idols hung in the air, and the 2 archaic 10 fiends among them, the 9 Netherhound and the Kun Peng, stirred like they'd caught the scent of family, because the grass sea was family. It was the 9-leaf sword grass, one of the archaic 10 fiends, and it had been waiting. An old presence rose out of it, a thing that was grass and sword and person all at once, and it sighed, and it gave me a seed. Finger-sized, sword-shaped, grass-colored. It flew into one of my caves and rooted and sprouted and became my 6th Dharma idol, forbidden rank, the 9-leaf sword grass, and with it came the grass character Sword Secret, an art whose whole thesis is that a single blade of grass can cut the sun, moon, and stars. My 3rd bone, or seed, of the 10 fiends. Another orphan of the old world, acknowledging one of its own. The heavens naturally sent lightning to complain. But this was where I learned the thing that would save my marriage before I even had one, because the tribulation this time was wrong. It was too long, far too long, and it dragged on, and up above the grass sea, 2 people were watching me and understanding why. The great dream celestial, Hua Lin's father, a living celestial venerable, and old Longui Grandpa, and what they saw was this. My tribulation had reached out and snagged on Hua Lin's star of calamitous solitude, her misfortune amplifying my punishment, the 2 curses feeding each other, and the celestial venerable, watching a child of heavenly condemnation stand under a doubled sky and refuse to fall, said the thing that decided everything, a child of heavenly condemnation and a star of calamitous solitude, a perfect match. I need to explain her curse because it's the heart of all of this. Hua Lin is a star of calamitous solitude. She brings ruin to everyone who gets close to her. And she is fated to die before she turns 20, and she was 19 years, 11 months, and 1 day old when I met her. The only way to break that fate is to reach the great emperor realm before 20, which no one in the history of the world has ever done, or to find someone whose luck is heavy enough to withstand her star and cancel it. Her father had opened this whole restricted area, broken the rules of his own seclusion, and staged a bride hunt for the entire world on the desperate chance that such a person existed. That person, it turned out, had fallen out of the void into the grass by her carriage. When I came out of the tribulation, alive, exhausted, half-scorched, the last of her mani pearls, the 9th bead, turned black, and her bracelet shattered, and her misfortune erupted with nothing left to hold it back, and I caught her before she fell. And the instant I touched her, my own condemned aura reached out and swallowed her star of calamitous solitude whole, suppressed it, cancelled it, because a nemesis had finally arrived. She stared at me. This girl the whole world had to keep away from, held for the first time by a man her curse couldn't touch, and her whole flawless face went red, and she called me Lin Dage. Big Brother Lin. I want to be honest about something. I have been cold to a lot of people in this story, and I've earned most of it. But the moment a girl the heavens had sentenced to die alone looked up at me and realized that being near me didn't hurt anyone, that with me she wasn't a plague, that for the first time in 19 years she could simply be held, something in me that Li Meiling had turned to stone cracked open a little. I didn't say anything clever. For once in my life I just held on. Longui Grandpa broke it up, of course, yanked me off her by the collar, cackling that there was no rush for all the hugging and kissing. And up on his hidden platform, the celestial venerable watched his lonely, doomed daughter smile like that for the first time in her life, and quietly, an old man who could unmake the sky decided he approved of me, which is why, about an hour later, that same old Longui knocked me out and threw me into a martial arts tournament I never signed up for. While I'd been in the grass, 3 days had passed on the lake, and a tournament had quietly turned into a public humiliation. Everyone had crossed the 7 deaths 7 lives lake by then, the Yaoguang Holy Sun first. Mo Yue, my Tongqian River acquaintance, who had secretly opened her own 8th cave off the devouring sword hilt, and was here only because 3-star envoys were chasing her. The Thunder Punishment Holy Sun, Qian Hao, the Beidou Holy Sons and Daughters, the Xianxia Holy Maiden, and Li Meiling, riding along as Xixia's new sworn sister. And the immortal tomb had welcomed them in, handed the women a dream reincarnation pill worth 3,000 years of youth, and set them up to be beaten. Because the mausoleum's disciples, the ones who challenged the visiting talents, weren't natives at all. They were high-fortune outsiders from across the whole world, from the Central Plains, the Western Desert, the Northern Plains, trapped in the tomb by old contracts and told that beating an Eastern wilderness talent bought back years of their freedom. A waiter called Gu Lei, a sweeping boy called Ye Xuan, an ascetic monk, Jing Ming, a blacksmith, and one by one they took the pride of a generation apart. The Yaoguang Holy Sun lost to the waiter and conceded rather than reveal his real trump. The 3 Beidou Holy Sons fell. The Thunder Punishment Holy Sun lost to the monk even after drawing a king's war weapon, because it turns out a Buddhist palm doesn't especially care about your thunder. The 5 Elements Holy Sun lost to the blacksmith. Qian Hao, a divine king body, lost. 90% of the Eastern Wilderness's finest defeated 0 wins in front of everyone. And the immortal tomb folk started saying out loud that none of these outsiders were worthy of the Lord's daughter. Somewhere in the middle of all that, xianxia, the Crimson Shadow envoy, took the opportunity to twist a knife, airing out Li Meiling's history in front of the whole crowd. How the great Taishuan saintess had kicked away her devoted childhood sweetheart Lin Feng, the one who'd handed her all his resources in order to latch onto the ancient sacred body. It landed as a slap on Li Meiling, not on me, and the room's regard for her dropped through the floor. And it also meant that, before I ever walked in, my name was already in the air, because the talents kept trading stories, and one story kept coming up. The only person who'd ever made the pale child of calamity, Shilei, taste defeat. Taichu Holy Sun and the 5 Elements Holy Sun recounted the peach banquet, how one man had trampled the golden Peng prince and crushed both of them, a man named Lin Feng, and Li Meiling listened to all of it and told herself it had to be a coincidence, a stranger with the same name, because her Lin Feng was rotting in the sky prison, or so she thought, having left before I broke out of it. Because Shilei was there too, and Shilei was winning. He'd survived the Tongtian River after all, scooped up by the Calamity Tower, reborn through his nirvana by refining the very bad luck I'd inflicted on him, and he'd come out of it at 8 caves, the first young leader of the whole Eastern Wilderness bar, Yan Luo himself. He stepped onto that arena and told everyone exactly what the marriage recruitment was really for, and the Immortal Tomb's Grand Elder confirmed it. It wasn't a bride hunt for love. It was a search for a child of fortune, someone whose great luck could resolve the daughter's fatal calamity, the very thing I'd done to Hua Lin in the grass without knowing it had a name. Then Shilei proved his point with his fists. He crushed Qin Yuan, that pure yang body, with his 9 calamities rebirth gate, 9 gates that cut an enemy's power to a fraction and make his own attacks misfire, and a transcendent Dharma image on top, confirmed 8 caves, confirmed the strongest man in the room. Then a young leader from the boundless sea arrived, a hidden Wen family talent called Han Guang, also at 8 caves, riding in on one she manifests 3 pure ones, and a truly impressive amount of contempt for the Eastern Wilderness. Shilei cracked open a Shura Calamity Gate, turned Han Guang's own clones against him, and beat him too. So there it was. Shilei, undefeated, standing in the middle of the arena, demanding that the marriage recruitment begin, insisting he could resolve the daughter's star of calamitous solitude even if he was no child of fortune. And the Grand Elder looked at him and smiled and told him he was going to be disappointed, and a figure came flying out of the sky and hit the arena floor. That figure was me, still cursing Longui Grandpa's name. The Grand Elder introduced me as the one chosen by the Celestial Venerable, and I'll tell you why he could say that, because it happened in the gap between the grass sea and the arena. The Celestial Venerable had taken me to a place at the heart of the mausoleum, a heavenly Shajuedi, a naturally formed deathland that had grown out of the fact of Hua Lin's birth and was slowly corroding the whole restricted area's fortune. He asked me to try to absorb it, so I ate it. The entire thing, the whole Deathland, cycled through the 9 calamities scripture and my Taiji cave until there was nothing left, which tempered my body and saved his home in one sitting. And watching me do it, the old man said the second thing that reshaped my sense of myself, that I was not only a child of heavenly condemnation, I was also a child of fortune. both at once, acquired rather than born, a person the heavens couldn't tolerate and couldn't stop favoring, and 9 Cavern would not be able to hold me, and one day I'd walk the starry sky ancient road to the place where the word supreme still means something. So that was the man Longui dropped onto the arena in front of Shile, which Shile did not know and was about to learn. The whole room turned to look at me, and I got to read every thread of my own life in their faces at once. Taichu Holy Sun and the 5 elements. Holy Sun stood up and greeted me warmly because their holy lands had warned them to befriend, never offend, the man with a near great saint demon king behind him. Xianxia purred that sister had missed me. Qin Yuan seethed about his stone. And then there were the women I'd tangled with, all in a row. Mo Yue, glaring at me with a very specific feeling that I recognized as unfinished business regarding a certain undergarment. And Ning, the veiled Tianxuan saintess, meeting my eyes with a soft, apologetic sorrow that made me want to go rearrange the world on her behalf. And Li Meiling, staring at me like the floor had tilted, mouthing the words, "Why is it really him?" because she'd left before I broke out, and none of the math added up. Shile didn't care about any of that. He wanted to settle the Tongtian River, where I'd very nearly killed him, so we fought, and I want to be clear about how I fought because it's the whole trick. I fought him with my hand closed, not one Dharma idol. Not the Azure Luon, not the 9 Netherhound, not the Kun Peng, not the Swordgrass, none of it, because the whole eastern wilderness was watching, every holy sun and clan heir in the world, and I do not show that many enemies my real cards for a warm-up. I let Shile stack his 9 calamities gates and grow confident. I let him think he had me on the ropes. Off in the seats, Han Guang, the boundless sea young leader Shile had just beaten, watched me holding back and said quietly that if he had to fight me, he wouldn't win. Nobody believed him. He was right. Over on the seats, Qin Yuan crossed to Li Meiling to force her to confirm my identity for his clan so they could come collect the heaven-mending stone. She refused icily, told him to ask me himself, and offended him for nothing, and the Zixia Holy Maiden and Hanxia both clocked the history in her voice. Everyone in that room could feel there was a story between the Taishuan Saintess and the man on the arena. None of them knew it ended with her heart on the floor. Then, I stopped holding back. Shile thought he still had victory in hand, right up until I told him he'd surprised me and disappointed me at the same time. The demon seed sword filled with sword chi until it stopped being a sword and started being an idea, and I drew the grass character sword secret, the single blade of grass that cuts the sun, moon, and stars. One stroke, a bowl-sized hole opened in Shilei's chest. A second stroke came for his life, and the Calamity Tower snatched him away one breath before it landed, dragging its master off the arena in a sorry, fleeing streak of 3-colored light. He'd fled from me for the 3rd time, and this time the whole world watched. I stood alone on the arena. It looked like I'd beaten one man. In truth, I'd beaten a whole tournament, because the entire field had already lost, down the chain, to the disciples, who'd lost to Shile, who'd just been blown off his feet by me. The Grand Elder coughed and congratulated me on becoming the champion of the Immortal Tombs martial gathering, and the silent Jiang clan king body finally spoke and named the thing everyone was thinking. The legendary Son of Fortune, which was when the Grand Elder started asking me some very leading questions about my age and my marital status and whether I'd ever considered settling down. And I realized, a few seconds too late, that I had won something I very much had not intended to enter. The champion, it turned out, was the son-in-law. The whole tournament had been a husband hunt, and I'd wandered in through the void and accidentally won the bride. And the Grand Elder was very sorry, but there were rules, and the Celestial Venerable's daughter was more beautiful than any saintess present, and would I please accept? I said no. I want to be fair to myself here. I didn't yet know the doomed girl I'd held in the grass was his daughter. As far as I knew, I was being volunteered to marry a stranger, and I already had complications. So I declined, on the grounds that I had someone I loved. That's when Hanxia decided to be helpful again, and aired Li Meiling's whole crime to the room a second time, louder, and the Thunder Punishment Holy Sun sneered that any man who'd give a woman his resources was a fool who deserved to be stepped on. And it all landed, again, not on me, but on her. The room's contempt piling up on the Taishuan Saintess while I stood there, and I decided to make it worse in the most entertaining way available. I named my beloved. In front of the entire eastern wilderness, I looked at the Yaoguang Saintess and announced that the woman I loved was Fairy Mo Yue. You could have heard a pin drop into another dimension. The eastern wilderness talents thought out loud that the Yaoguang Saint had just been cuckolded in public. Mo Yue turned the color of a boiled shrimp and denied everything in a voice that was trying very hard to be cold. So I reminded her, warmly, of the Tongtian River, of how we'd spent time together, day and night, of a certain personal item I was still holding on to. She looked like she wanted to remove my tongue with her bare hands. She also, and this is the part she'll deny to her grave, looked moved. Because somewhere under the fury she'd heard me say, without flinching, in front of the world, that she was the one. and Li Meiling heard me not say her name. That's when it broke in her. Not the resource theft, not the poison, none of the things she'd rationalized. It was watching me stand there and reach for another woman entirely, and finally understanding the thing she'd been refusing to see. Zhao Jian was never the protagonist. The ancient sacred body was just a physique. The world was not a book she'd read the ending of, and the childhood friend she'd stepped on to reach the male lead was the actual child of fortune, standing in the middle of the arena as a celestial venerable's chosen son-in-law, not looking at her at all. She stood up, tears already falling, and cried out that I couldn't agree to this. Lin Feng, you can't marry her. I didn't look at her. I want you to understand that I'd imagined 100 versions of my revenge on Li Meiling, and none of them was as cold as the thing I actually did, which was nothing. I simply did not turn my head. To a woman who'd once been my whole world, I gave the exact amount of attention you'd give a draft under a door. Xianxia caught her when her legs went, and I moved on because the Grand Elder was still talking, and the room had developed a new and pressing problem. The problem was that I still wasn't agreeing to the marriage, and the entire hall, it turned out, could not leave until I did, so they ganged up on me. The immortal tomb disciples, desperate for the freedom that hinged on this wedding, insisted it was fate, a match made in heaven, that the celestial venerable's wrath would trap us all forever if I refused. The monk Jingming looked me dead in the eye and lied about karma with a straight holy face. Taichu Holy Sun slapped my shoulder and pointed out that a whole banquet full of the world's proudest talents were now, functionally, my hostages. Even the Beidou holy maidens chimed in to help. I stood in the middle of all of them, the freshly minted champion of the world, being enthusiastically pressured into a marriage by a room full of people I'd met that afternoon, and I said the only true thing available to me. This is moral kidnapping. I was thrown in here. Nobody cared. And across the hall, Mo Yue quietly ached, and Li Meiling quietly wept, and I had a feeling my objections weren't going to survive the day. My objections did not survive the day. Longui Grandpa hit me over the head with a golden marriage certificate, and the next thing I knew, I was falling into a black pit called the 100 Lifetimes Reincarnation Abyss. I need you to understand what that place is, because it's the most dangerous thing in the entire restricted area. 100 dream lifetimes, one after another, each one so real you forget you're dreaming, until somewhere around the 99th you forget who you are entirely and simply vanish, dissolved into a life that was never yours. In the whole history of the mausoleum, exactly 2 people had ever walked out of it, Hua Lin and her father. That was the celestial venerable's real plan, the sly old fox. Not to kill me, to send me and his daughter through 100 lifetimes together, to temper us, to bind us, to give me a shot at the 9 Cavern, and in his own words, so that a boy with as many romantic entanglements as I clearly had wouldn't bully his wire later. And Hua Lin, when she understood I'd been dropped in, didn't hesitate for a heartbeat. She jumped in after me. We fell into the dark holding hands, and that changed the whole nature of it, because the abyss is meant to be walked alone, and we were about to walk 100 lifetimes together. In the first life, we were born a prince and a princess of the Li Tang dynasty, and I want to sit in this one with you for a moment, because of what it was. Our mothers were like sisters, so Hua Lin and I grew up side by side, childhood sweethearts, the 2 of us against the world. I need you to hear the shape of that. The last time I'd had a childhood sweetheart, it had ended with a poisoned bone and a ribbon. This time the childhood sweetheart was real and true and never once let go of my hand. We grew into the finest martial artists alive. We roamed the rivers and lakes. We fell in love the honest way, slow and total. And the only way out of a dream life is to die out of it. So when a would-be immortal tried to refine the 2 of us and a whole kingdom as sacrifice for his ascension, I cut his throat, and then Hua Lin and I climbed into the ascension tribulation ourselves, drew all its fire onto us, and died together on purpose. Her last words in that life, fading in the red light, were that we might not meet again in the next one, and that I was never to forget her. I cupped her face and kissed her while the world erased us both. The second life put the knife back in the story and pointed it the other way. I was born immortal in a world of immortals, and on my wedding night, my bride, veiled in red, drove a blade into my chest, and the pain of it woke my memory, jolted the name Lin Feng back into me, because the last time a woman I trusted put a blade in my life, it had made me who I am. I survived, hunted, was saved by a whisk-wielding fairy, joined the Qingyun immortal sect, and rose to be its strongest true disciple and heir. And on the day I was to ascend to sect master, the demonic sect attacked, and my master pointed at their bewitching demoness and told me to kill her to earn my seat. The demoness was Hua Lin, unawakened, living fully inside the dream, no memory of me, no memory of 100 lives, just a woman on the other side of a righteous versus demonic war being told I was her enemy, and I could not raise a hand against her. So I did the only thing that had ever worked to wake a sleeper. I remembered how my own memory had come back on a wedding night at the point of a blade, and I let her run me through. She stabbed me, my whole sect watching in horror, her demonic cultists cheering, and as my life drained out of me, her memory came flooding back, 100 lifetimes crashing home all at once, and she caught me before I hit the ground with tears streaming down a face that had just remembered it loved me. She swept friend and foe aside and fled with my dying body in her arms. And later, recovering, she was furious with me. "It's not like I couldn't have woken up," she snapped, half in tears. "You could have just provoked me a little more. Why did you have to do that?" And I told her that my Hualin didn't call me Lin Dage anymore and had learned how to be angry, and she went red and hit me, and it was, I promise you, one of the happiest arguments of any of my lives. We ended the second life the way we ended the first, dying together, cornered by both the righteous and the demonic at once, choosing to go out side by side rather than apart. 100 lifetimes is a long time to learn a single lesson. We were learning it well. The lives blurred after that, and I'll give you the ones that stuck. In the third life, I was a starship captain on a blue world of technology so advanced it crossed the stars, and Hua Lin was an heiress from a rival civilization, and she threw away her whole world to run away with me, and we died together somewhere in the vast dark, being chased. In the fourth, I was a scholar who topped the imperial exams, and the emperor tried to marry me to a princess, and I caused a scene on my own wedding day and ran off with Hua Lin instead, and we died together on the execution platform. There's a theme if you're keeping track. There always was. By the 99th life, the joke had turned all the way around. I was a ruthless assassin, and my target was Hua Lin, the empress of the Zhuli dynasty, who had woken to her memories first and remembered everything, and I could not kill her. Life after life of trying, and she released me every single time, until at the end, I was so broken by failing to murder the woman I couldn't remember loving that I drew my own sword on myself, and she stopped me and married me instead, and defied the whole world to keep me. I got my memory back at the very end of that one and realized she'd been, and I want to use her exact accounting here, ravaging me for an entire lifetime. When I asked her how many times later, she went scarlet and admitted the number, 1001. And then there was the 100th life, and I need you to remember it, because it comes back. In the last life, I returned to a world like this one, and I got the complete devouring heaven magic skill, the real thing, the whole art, and I became the demon art inheritor, the enemy of the entire world. I hunted talents, devoured their origin, laid my plans to eat the world one soul at a time, and when they exposed me, the whole world turned against me, and everyone who'd ever known me severed ties and denounced me, and I didn't regret it because I'd known the price when I started. The only living thing that stayed was a little fox I'd met while recovering in a peach grove, a man and a fox hiding from the whole world, and I told myself I didn't need anything else. Until the day they cornered me for good, and the little fox threw itself in front of the killing blow and died in my arms as a woman of unbearable beauty, and it was her, it was always her, and I went mad. I broke the 9 forbidden shackles, stepped into the forbidden domain, and used the devouring heaven's mutual destruction technique to mark every besieger with a death seat and detonate them all at once. Saints and great saints bursting like struck mirrors, the whole world shattering around me while I held her. I didn't know it then, half dreaming at the bottom of an abyss. But I'd just lived a rehearsal of something the waking world was about to try to pin on me for real. We walked out of the 100 lifetimes reincarnation abyss together, both of us, still holding hands, the third pair in the history of the place to survive it. And when Hua Lin woke on the real ground, with my real hand in hers, she pressed her face to my chest and whispered that this time she wasn't leaving, that this wasn't a dream anymore. I held her for a long time before I could make myself let go. Then I ruined the moment because that's who I am. "Tell me honestly," I said, "in the 99th life, how many times did you beat me up?" She bit her lip and told me, 1001. And I want the record to show that after 100 lifetimes together, 1,001 of them apparently spent thoroughly abusing me. Hua Lin was still, somehow, a maiden. She'd never crossed that line, in any life, with anyone. There's a purity to her that 100 worlds couldn't touch. I found that unreasonably moving and told her so, and she covered my mouth and refused to let me finish the sentence. Long Gui yanked us out to break it up, cackling, and then he told me the last piece, the one Hua Lin had never quite said out loud. That she was the star of calamitous solitude, dead before 20, and that I, a body of heavenly retribution, was the only person alive whose fate could cancel hers. If I didn't marry her, he said, she could simply wait to die. I picked her up around the waist and flew off with her before he'd finished, laughing. Heaven's punishment and heaven's calamity, I said. A perfect match. Even the sky is handing me a wife. How could I possibly refuse? And I meant it, all of it. I told her that whatever her star of calamitous solitude needed to be broken, I'd do it, even if it cost me my life. And Hua Lin, held against my chest, said the thing I've carried through every fight since. That even if she'd been fated to die without ever meeting me, she'd never have gone looking for anyone else. And I believed her, because I'd watched her prove it 100 times. The whole world had come to that restricted area to win a bride. I was the one man there who hadn't wanted her, and I was the only one leaving married. Fate has a sense of humor. Mostly it's at my expense. Occasionally, it's on my side. The wedding was announced to the whole eastern wilderness, and every holy land and ancient family sent Saint Lord elders with gifts, because a marriage into a restricted area is the kind of thing that reshapes maps. I rode to fetch my bride in red robes with the immortal tomb disciples for groomsmen, and they spent the whole ride seeding my future, telling me about the Central Plains, the Eastern Continent Holy Palace, the Heavenly Palace where the world's real powers are made, the road that runs on past the edge of everything I'd known. I filed all of it away. I always do. 2 things happened at that banquet worth marking. The first was xianxia, Chen Hao's second sister, who used to rank just under Li Meiling as a quasi-holy daughter of my old Taishuan Holy Land, and who walked in now, awakened, at 8 caves, the only female young leader in the world at that height, and openly interested in me, which was, whether she meant it or not, one more slap on Li Meiling, whose own junior had overtaken her, and now wanted the man she'd thrown away. And the second was An Ning, the veiled Tianshuan saintess, standing plain and sorrowful at the edge of my wedding, and I found I couldn't stop looking at her, and I asked about the Mo Yue who hadn't come, out loud, at my own wedding banquet, because I contain multitudes and most of them are inconvenient. Then the ceremony began. Me in red, Hua Lin in a red veil and a phoenix crown, and a scholar to read the vows, which included a line I want you to hear because of who was in the room, that to betray one's beloved is to deceive heaven, and the sin of deceiving heaven is death, and a lover who betrays is erased from the world. And as Hua Lin and I reached for each other's hands, Li Meiling crashed the wedding. Lin Feng, you can't marry her. She stood there, plain-robed and desperate, and told the whole hall the truth she'd only just accepted, that Hua Lin was a star of calamitous solitude, intolerable to heaven and earth, that marrying her would swallow my boundless luck and wither me down to nothing. And then, tears falling, she begged. 13 years of childhood sweethearts, she said. Could I really be so heartless as to end it? The Xianxia holy maiden stood with her, willing to offend a restricted area for her sworn sister's sake. I looked at the woman who'd handed me a poisoned bone with a ribbon on it, and I gave her my answer. Who I marry is none of your business, Li Meiling. We are nothing to each other anymore. And then, because she'd made it a question of heaven, I made it one back. So what if Hua Lin is a star of calamitous solitude? So what if heaven and earth can't tolerate her? If heaven won't tolerate me, then I'll defy heaven. If earth won't tolerate me, I'll wreck the earth. And if the common people slander us, I let it hang. Then what harm is there in slaughtering all living beings? I took Hua Lin's hand under the veil, and the Tao companion oath sealed, and the whole hall of the proudest talents in the world went quiet and afraid, because they'd just heard a cave heaven boy declare war on heaven itself for a woman, and mean every word, and Li Meiling broke. It wasn't the poison that undid her, or the resource theft, or any of the crimes she'd rationalized. It was my flat, final, you have no right to question me. It was standing at my wedding to someone else, and finally, completely, understanding that she had truly lost me, that the man she'd stepped on had become a legend, and the protagonist she'd chosen had become a heart demon rotting in a prison, and that she had done it all to herself. She coughed blood, and then a sound rang out across the hall, and it was not thunder, though it sounded like thunder. It was the great Tao itself, crying out. It was a Tao heart shattering. Her cultivation collapsed on the spot. A 7-cave talent, one of the finest of her generation, reduced in a single breath to a cripple with no future, undone not by a blow I struck, but by an indifference I couldn't be bothered to fake. The room's verdict was immediate and merciless. She betrayed him first. She brought it on herself. Xianxia knocked her unconscious to keep her from shattering further, and fled with her. And Zhang Shui, watching, said the only kind thing anyone said, quietly, to no one, that Li Meiling wouldn't have shattered like that if she truly didn't still care. I want to be honest with you because I've been honest this whole time. I imagined my revenge on Li Meiling more times than I can count, and when it finally came, it cost me nothing. I didn't raise a hand. I didn't say a cruel word. I just stopped, entirely, caring whether she lived or died, and it turned out that was the only weapon that could reach her. The girl who gifted me a poisoned bone was undone, in public, on my wedding day, by the plain fact that I no longer looked at her at all. The bone had a ribbon on it. I remembered that, watching them carry her out. She'd tied a ribbon on it. Then heaven sent its objection to the wedding. A child of heavenly condemnation marrying a star of calamitous solitude and canceling her death sentence is, from the sky's point of view, 2 crimes in one ceremony, and the sky does not send a warning for that. It sends a divine punishment tribulation. Black clouds swallowed the whole city, and every guest felt the weight of it, and I kissed Hua Lin's forehead, told her not to worry because I was here, and flew out beyond the walls to take it alone rather than let it eat the wedding. It was the worst tribulation I'd ever faced, a solid sea of lightning with no gaps and no mercy, and I stood in the middle of it and let it hit me because I am, and I say this with real fondness for myself, extremely hard to kill. When the clouds cleared, I was scorched and disheveled and grinning, and I asked the sky if that was really all it had. It was. The Grand Elder explained my nature to the terrified guests, that I was a child of heavenly condemnation, whose luck was boundless enough to cancel a star of calamitous solitude, a perfect and impossible match, and Han Guang murmured the name of the physique like it was a ghost story, and then I went back inside and married Hua Lin for real. The banquet flowed after that. Goulet got me drunk, the monk Jing Ming toasted of all things to fate, and I nearly threw my cup at him, and I found a quiet minute with a Ning, the sad-veiled saintess, and told her not to cage herself for things that weren't her fault, and that if she ever needed help, she should come find me. I meant it more than a newly married man probably should have. I told you I contain multitudes. I'll be honest about the wedding night the way I've been honest about everything, which is to say I'll close the door. Hua Lin was afraid and cold to the touch, her curse rising black around her as the world made its last objection, and I lifted her veil and told her that if heaven dared to kill her, I dared to annihilate heaven. And then I drew the curtain, and some things you don't say out loud, even to a friend. When it was done, her star of calamitous solitude was broken, bound to my luck, cancelled, gone. She would live past 20. She would live. There was a cost, because there's always a cost, though for once it wasn't a cruel one. Breaking her fate loosened her cultivation, and she needed to seclude to master the origin of the very star that had almost killed her. So we parted. The 2 of us, married and separated in the same week, because a man does not become the kept house husband of a Saint Lord wife, however appealing that occasionally sounded. One walks one's own road. She had hers to walk now, finally, with a future at the end of it. I had mine. Before I left, her father, the Celestial Venerable, made sure I understood that I was no longer a man anyone could easily kill. Through a soulmate mark he'd placed in me and Hua Lin both, the immortal tomb could feel any Saint Lord who raised a hand against me anywhere in the eastern wilderness and tear through space to send a great saint to my side. It's a strange thing, to walk out of a wedding not just with a wife, but with a safety net woven by a being who can unmake the sky. I'd spent my whole life with nothing behind me but a dead beggar's memory. Now I had a restricted area at my back, and out in the world, while I'd been dreaming 100 lifetimes and getting married, the pieces had kept moving. The Feng family's pure Kui daughter, Qin Mei, marked by prophecy to fall into Yan Luo's hands and die, had been quietly told by a mysterious young master that only a man surnamed Lin could save her, and had begun to think about leaving her clan. And somewhere in the snow, a black-robed figure with a devouring bottle had started eating the origin of special physique talents across the eastern wilderness, killing them and their Saint Lord guardians both, and the whole world had begun to whisper the oldest bad word there is. The demon art inheritor had returned. I had married the girl the heavens wanted dead. I'd walked out of it stronger than I went in, with a doomed wife saved and a celestial venerable at my back. I thought the hard part was behind me. I am, on this and many other subjects, an optimist, and I am usually wrong. I left the mausoleum into a world buried in year-end snow, with Mo sleeping off an all-you-can-eat binge of spirit herbs inside a jade bracelet my new father-in-law had given me, and I got about a day's walk before the old paying saint ambushed me again, because that grudge would apparently outlive us both. And that's when I learned exactly how good the safety net was. The immortal tomb's Grand Elder, a genuine great saint who'd been quietly shadowing me the whole time, appeared out of nowhere and crushed the Ping Saint with a fingertip, sparing him at first step Saint Lord, specifically so I could kill him myself later. Then he pointed me east, told me to go east, and my wish would come true, and left to go scout the world for hidden doors, because an ancient road was reopening, and old men loved their secrets. So I went east, and east is where I met the 2 women who would take up the next chunk of my life. The first found me in the snow. xianxia, the Crimson Shadow envoy, sidelined by her own sect and wandering, spotted me and threw herself at me. I palm struck her on reflex and genuinely hurt her, because my casual palm now carries 7th forbidden power and she's a cave heaven girl. And then she got up bleeding and threw herself at me again anyway, and I realized she wasn't attacking, she was recruiting. She wanted me to kill Yan Luo. Kill him, she said, and I'm yours. Fail, and I'm still yours, but you'll never see me again, because Yan Luo would take her for his own, and that would be the end of her. She was betting her whole life on a woman's intuition that I could beat the one man the entire world was afraid of. She kissed me to seal it, badly, biting my lip, her first kiss ever apparently, and I want it on the record that the most terrifying assassin in the Netherworld stable had the kissing technique of a startled cat. I'll tell you my policy on all this plainly, because it kept coming up. I love Hua Lin 100 lifetimes worth. I love Mo Yue, panties and all, and I was not going to spend this life regretting and saying I'd love properly in the next one. The great Tao shouldn't be small, and a man's Tao companions shouldn't be few. If Mo Yue loved me back, then the Yaoguang Holy Sun would simply have to die. I say these things out loud so I never have to lie about them later. Xianxia paid for her recruitment with a tip. The elder, far stronger generation of the 7 Fiend Star envoys had been deployed, and they were ambushing the Tianshuan Scientess An Ning and 3 Beidou holy maidens to rip the Beidou scriptures straight out of their souls. Yanluo wanted those scriptures because the 7 of them combined into something that could reverse open cave heavens, and he was already at 8 caves reaching for the 9th. I heard the name An Ning, remembered a sad woman at my wedding, and ran. I was too late to stop it starting, and just in time for what it woke up. The Elder Star envoys had trapped the 4 women in a soul-severing array, splitting their souls apart to copy the scriptures past the protective seals in their minds. And when the Netherworld chains reached An Ning, something in her woke that I don't think even she knew was there. Her plain dress bled red, a dark blood lotus mark bloomed on her brow. And the gentle, sorrowful saintess became something else entirely, a red-haired demoness out of the Shura hell, and she put a single blood arrow through the Elder Crimson Shadow envoy, a nether void expert, and dropped him dying, and tore a crack in their array and fled through it, and then collapsed back into her weak, gentle, amnesiac self with no memory of what she'd done. That's the thing you have to understand about An Ning. There are 2 of her, and the second one is a monster in the most literal sense, and both of them are the same woman, and I would come to love both. The Elder Shadowblade envoy chased the reverted, helpless version of her down and cornered her, and moved to drag her back as Yan Luo's prize, or kill her for the power he'd just seen, and she would rather have blown herself up than be taken, and he bound her so she couldn't, and that's the scene I flew into. I caught her as she fell into my arms, told her I was sorry I was late, cut the binding light, and drew the grass character sword secret with the 100-fold magic verse behind it. The single blade of grass that cuts the sun, moon, and stars fell on a perfected nether void expert, and he became a fine red mist on the snow, no bones, nothing. A cave heaven boy erasing a nether void killer between one breath and the next. And Ning, white and shaking in my arms, looked up at the man who'd just done that as easily as brushing off snow, and I felt her decide something about me right there, though it took her a while to admit it. I'd come east because an old man told me my wish would come true. I was starting to suspect the wish had a name, and it was hers. I healed her with the heaven-mending stone, which works faster than anything I own, and then I went and finished the job on the 3 Beidou holy maidens the Elder Star envoy still had trapped. One sorted the recovering Heijian, routed the rest, and in the chaos, the 3 soul clusters the array had ripped out of the maidens, the actual Beidou scriptures, 3 of the 7, flew into me instead of them, and I accidentally absorbed the entire inheritance of 3 holy lands because my luck is a genuine hazard to everyone around me. The grateful maidens turned ungrateful the moment they realized I had their scriptures and wouldn't be giving them back, so I made them a counteroffer. I'd save their lives, and I informed them, not a soft-hearted man who gives favors for free. Perhaps the 3 Holy Lands could show their gratitude by casually handing over 2 or 3 saint weapons. Those who are inexplicably good to you, I told them, are all after your body. I'm at least honest about charging. They found this outrageous, which it was, and they could do exactly nothing about it, which was the point. I shielded An Ning from their pressure and left with her. She was tearing herself apart over it because the 3 had been pressuring her for her Tianshuan Sutra, and she couldn't give it because Tianshuan was her home and her master was the closest thing she'd ever had to a mother. I told her, teasing, that I'd take responsibility for her, and watched her not know what to do with that, and I pulled her into my arms once just to feel her stop being sad for a second. Then Xianxia caught back up, having formally burned her bridges with the Netherworld to bet her life on me, and she did the thing she does, which is cause trouble. She pressed herself against me in front of An Ning and asked, sweetly, who was prettier, and I learned something important about An Ning's monster, because the jealousy did it. The blood lotus bloomed, the red-haired demoness came out, and she tried to cut Xianxia in half. I blocked it, grass character sword against her Shura blade, and she reverted, weak and murmuring for me to be careful of that woman. So now I knew the trigger. The gentle An Ning keeps the demon locked away, and the thing that lets it out is her feelings for me. That is either the most romantic or the most alarming fact I have ever learned about a person, and I still can't decide which. I sent Xianxia on ahead to the Endless Sea before she got herself bisected, and carried An Ning toward her home. Her home was on fire, figuratively, by the time we got close. The 3 Beidou Holy Lands had marched on the Tianshuan Holy Land, blaming it for their 3 dead holy sons and their stolen scriptures, which was a pretext because what they actually wanted was the Tianshuan Sutra. The truth, which the reader knows and they didn't, is that their holy sons had been killed by the real demon art inheritor, the black-robed hunter eating special physique talents across the snow. But dead is dead, and a grieving Holy Land makes a fine excuse. The Tianshuan Holy Lord, a hidden 7-step Saint Lord, refused to be framed, and an old ancestor told him the secret behind all of it. That the 7 Beidou scriptures combined hide a world-shattering method, a forbidden path that shouldn't be opened yet. That's why the Beidou split into 7 in the first place, an ancient act of self-defense against their own inheritance. And that's why 3 of them were now willing to burn the 4th to gather more than half. They failed to force Tianshuan directly, so they came back with a partner, and the partner is where it got ugly. The Thunder Punishment Holy Land. An 8-step Saint Lord named Lei Ji and his holy son, my old sparring partner Lei Zhan Yu, arriving to propose marriage to An Ning with a saint weapon as the betrothal gift. Wed her, ally the Holy Lands, extract the sutra, and they pulled a filthy trick to force it, publicly announcing the alliance wedding and inviting every force in the central region to attend, so that Tianshuan would have to accept or lose all face in front of the world. Tianshuan refused anyway, because a holy daughter does not marry out, and the ancestors were more enraged by the coercion than tempted by the weapon, and a half-step great saint of Tianshuan came out and knocked the 8-step Lei Ji flat with sheer presence, spitting curses, humiliated on Tianshuan's own ground, and into that standoff, into a hall packed with schemers and saint lords and one holy son who'd come to force marry the woman in my arms, I walked, holding her hand, in no mood whatsoever. The Jade Pivot Holy Master, ever the schemer, tried to trap me the second he saw me, announcing that I'd surely come to attend the happy marriage ceremony on behalf of the immortal tomb. I told him I hadn't heard of any marriage, and then I learned what the marriage was, and I put a stop to the whole thing with one question. Since when, I asked the room, looking at Lei Zhan Yu, is a mere thunder punishment holy son worthy of Saintess Q? You're not fit to carry my shoes. He came at me for that, and I'll grant he'd grown. He was in the Soul Palace now, 3rd layer, and he'd awakened something borrowed and terrible, a heavenly punishment will, and for one breath I saw through his eyes into a dark ancient world with a figure on a throne gazing across the ages and felt, genuinely, like I might die. Then I remembered that I eat divine retribution for breakfast, and I drew the grass character sword secret specifically to cut that borrowed will loose and put him on the ground, twice. You can't even block one of my swords, I told him. Where do you get the confidence to marry Saintess Q? Then the 3 Beidou holy maidens I'd saved and robbed showed up and announced to the whole hall that I'd absorbed their 3 Holy Land scriptures, and the 6 Beidou old ancestors turned their attention on me, and things got briefly dangerous, so I leaned on the debt right back. I'd saved their saintesses. How exactly did the 3 Holy Lands intend to repay the immortal tomb's son-in-law? That's when the Tianshuan old ancestor, a half-step great saint named Hantian, played the single best move I've ever watched a person make. He'd been tipped off quietly that his Saintess Ning loved me, so he solved every one of his problems with a sentence. He declared me the new saint of the Tianshuan Holy Land and poured the Tianshuan Sutra into me on the spot, which meant, in one stroke, that I was no longer an outsider the Beidou could shake down. I was Tianshuan's own saint, and they couldn't demand a fellow Holy Land saint hand anything back. It protected me. It protected the sutra. It kept the 4 scriptures I now carried inside the family. And it handed his love-struck saintess exactly what she'd been too dutiful to ask for. I accepted, and then, in front of every Central Region lord in that hall, I said the plain thing. I came to the Tianshuan Holy Land, I told them, specifically for Saintess Q. You should have seen her face. Ning had spent the whole story certain that a holy daughter could never marry out. She'd been mocked as the widow, the holy son's killer. She'd never once dared say a word about what she actually felt. And now she heard the man she loved announce it to the entire world without so much as blinking, and she went scarlet and radiant in the same breath, because we were saint and saintess of the same Holy Land now. The one wall left standing between us had just been knocked flat by a scheming old man who'd decided he liked her. Thunder punishment had come to force marry her and left a laughingstock. The 3 Beidou Holy Lands stood there dumbfounded, and I could see the exact thought crossing all 6 ancestors' faces at once. We have empty saint seats. We have 3 dead holy sons. Why didn't we think of that? Because you're not shameless enough, gentlemen. It takes practice. They made me the 100th saint of the Tianshuan Holy Land, and I celebrated by publicly asking the Holy Lord whether A. Saint and a saintess were permitted to become Tao companions, which mortified a Ning and delighted her matchmaking maids. And then, in her plum blossom courtyard, she helped me cultivate. And I'll close the door on the details, but keep the parts that matter. She transferred power to me, so the Tianxuan Sutra shot up to major achievement, matching her. I swore on my Tao heart never to betray her, which is not a small oath. It means my Tao collapses if I break it, and I meant it. And I stopped short of the final step, because she hadn't yet broken into the Soul Palace and I wouldn't rush her, which she took wrongly as me not wanting her, which brought out the red-haired demoness, who has no such hesitations and took the lead herself. 2 women, 1 soul, 1 love, and both of them mine. Afterward, the gentle one stopped calling me Master Lin and started calling me husband. And I decided the whole ridiculous journey east had been worth it for that one word. And while I was busy being a newlywed twice over, I made a discovery that reset all my ambitions again. When I fused the 4 Beidou scriptures I now carried, Tianxuan and Yuheng and Open Yang and Tianquan, a faint outline appeared beside my 8 caves, the rough shape of a 9th. The old man had been right, and the Beidou secret was real. The 7 scriptures combined can reverse open a cave heaven, the same forbidden trick as the 9 calamities and the devouring heaven, and that is why 3 holy lands were willing to burn a 4th for them. I had 4 of the 7. I needed the last 3, Yaoguang and Celestial Axis and Tianji, and all 3 would be at the Beidou summit out on the endless sea. The 9th cave the Silvermane Griffin Lord would trade the world for was sitting in outline in my Dantian, waiting for me to finish it. So my road east had a next stop, and it was the sea. But the world had other plans for me first, because the whisper in the snow had become a scream. The Feng family stood up and named it. The devouring heaven magic skill had reappeared. A demon art inheritor was loose in the eastern wilderness, devouring the origin of special physique talents with no bottleneck, no ceiling, a thing that could theoretically eat its way all the way up to emperor if nobody stopped it. Every special physique heir in the world was prey, above all the Feng twins with their pure yang and pure qi. And so the Feng family and Tailin Holy Land and one force after another declared the demon art inheritor an irreconcilable enemy of the whole world. I want you to hold 2 facts side by side, the way I couldn't yet. The real demon art inheritor was the low-key Yaoguang saint, quietly eating talents to open his own 8th cave. And I, Lin Feng, was a man who carried a fragment of the devouring heaven magic art in his 8th cave, plus the Empress's nameless tablet, plus her emperor's seat, and who had a very public habit of showing up wherever the world's biggest opportunities appeared. If you were going to frame someone for being the demon art inheritor, you couldn't have designed a better patsy than me if you'd built one from scratch. Somebody was about to notice that, and somebody did. Before I get to that, I owe you the end of Li Meiling's story, because it finished while I wasn't looking. Xianxia had kept her alive after the shatter and goaded her into rebuilding her broken Tao heart around a new obsession, not to earn my forgiveness, which was hopeless, but simply to become strong enough to stand near me at all. And Li Meiling's heart did reforge itself on that single fixed idea that he may not care for me, but if I care for him, that's enough. And the reforging tore open a strange starry sky portal out of a frozen lake, a piece of the ancient road, and voices told her she'd betrayed her way out of the right to enter it. And she walked through anyway, weeping, saying that if I hated her this much, she'd choose another life to continue our destiny. And then she was gone, into the stars, and the lake closed over the place she'd been. So that's where the girl who handed me a poisoned bone ends up. Undone by my indifference, remade around me anyway, and vanished into a door the heavens told her she wasn't allowed through. I don't feel much about it. I checked. But I noted it, the way I note everything, because in this world nobody stays gone who leaves through a door like that. Now, the frame. I'd gone to my Tianxuan Holy Land's intelligence pavilion to read up on this demon art inheritor, and reading it, I realized something clarifying. I only had the devouring heavens cave opening fragment, not the actual cultivation art, which meant the real inheritor had gotten the whole thing somewhere I hadn't. And then a name jumped off an old file, the Naihe Gate, a demonic sect even more hidden than the Netherworld, whose young master was titled Forget River, and attached to it a place called the End of the World, which is when it clicked, because Wenzhong, my forbidden alchemist, had told me to collect my 100 burning essence pills at a place called the End of the World, a month gone by now. Wenzhong, who kept saying we'd meet in a different capacity. Wenzhong, who might be Naihe. So I went to the Holy City, a great crossroads of the central region, to find the End of the World, and through it, Wenzhong. And when I couldn't find that hidden little organization by looking, I did the thing that always works. I made myself the bait. I let it be known, loudly, that Lin Feng had come to hunt the demon art inheritor, so that either Wenzhong's people would find me, or the inheritor himself would, and either way, something would move. Tai Chu Holy Sun found me first, delighted, because the whole northern region was now under orders to befriend and never offend the immortal Tomb's son-in-law. He gave me the lore over drinks. The devouring heaven magic skill surfaces in every chaotic era. Its inheritor is always hunted to death by the whole world, and when he isn't, catastrophe follows and whole ages die screaming. So a supreme rises each era to be its natural nemesis, and the central plane's talents come flocking to kill the inheritor for the glory of it. And I sat there nodding, the man carrying a devouring heaven fragment and the Empress's throne, publicly volunteering to hunt the very thing I could most easily be mistaken for, while a young clan master at the next table said ominously that any one of us could secretly be the demon art inheritor. He had no idea how close to the mark he was going to look by morning, because I wasn't the only one who'd noticed what a perfect patsy I made. The Netherworld First Grade Hall had a stronghold in that city, and they'd finally worked out that I was the one who'd wiped out their Elder Star envoys, and they couldn't kill me openly, not with a near great Saint Demon King and a Celestial Venerable at my back. So they got clever. They knew who the real demon art inheritor was, their young master had told them, and it wasn't me. But it could be me, as far as the world knew. So while I was setting myself up as bait for the inheritor, they set me up as the inheritor. They killed talents across the holy city, devoured their origin, left the bodies on purpose, and planted a mummified corpse in my own inn room. And a second group of black-robed watchers saw them do it and said something I didn't hear until later. That since this was young Master Lin, they'd soon have to start calling me young clan master. I didn't hear it because I was out in the snow, taking one of Wenjong's demon appearance pills to upgrade my Taudi idol to forbidden rank, riding out the tribulation, and using the lightning to sharpen the outline of my 9th cave, enjoying a quiet, productive evening. Completely unaware that back in the holy city, an entire generation of grieving fathers was being handed a corpse with my name on it. Out there in the snow, I picked up a traveling companion, and she brought the last piece of the puzzle with her without knowing it. Xianxia, holy maiden, alone now that Li Meiling had walked off into the stars, had crossed paths with the Yaoguang saint on the road, and the Yaoguang saint had swallowed her, no warning, in a strange black mist that cut off every one of her senses at once. She'd only escaped by burning a xianxia Holy Land secret to do it, a black mist that eats the senses. That's a devouring heaven technique. She'd been attacked by the real demon art inheritor and lived, and she half suspected it and didn't dare say. She attached herself to me for protection, prickly on Li Meiling's behalf, and I, being fair, informed her that I couldn't rule out that she herself was the demon art inheritor, since nobody knew if it was a man or a woman. She did not enjoy that, but I'd already done the math the same way she had. The low-key Yaoguang saint wandering the central region alone in the middle of a manhunt, unafraid. It was him. It had been him the whole time. We reached the holy city to find it on fire. Young clan masters dead, origins devoured, and the city's emperor Dao restrictions slammed shut. One way, enter but never leave, to trap the demon art inheritor inside. And I'd been absent during the killings, off taking my pill, which meant the suspicion swung neatly onto me, right where the netherworld had aimed it. A boundless sea stranger named Cao Li from some hidden sect said it out loud to the whole crowd. Either Lin Feng was dead, or Lin Feng was the demon art inheritor, using the bait pose as a cover to clear himself. It was a good frame. It had a corpse in my room and a dead man killed with Tai Xuan scripture power, which only I in that city could wield, and a grieving Li Huo sect leader, a 4-step saint lord whose son had died, ready to tear my head off on nothing but that. Here's the thing they got wrong, and it's the thing I've been telling you the whole story. A frame only works on people who want to believe it. And the sect leaders of that city did not want a war with a restricted area and a Tianquan Holy Land over a corpse that was too conveniently placed. So while the Li Huo sect leader raged, the smart ones held back, and my Tianquan peak master shielded me, and I took the frame apart in public, one calm question at a time. Xianxia testified to the timeline. She'd watched me undergo my tribulation last night, hours away, at the exact window the Li Huo boy died, so I couldn't have been in two places. And when a Li Huo cultivator lunged at me anyway to force the issue, a divine power expert mid-realm, I took his head with one sword before his strike finished, in front of the whole sealed city. A 9th layer cave heaven boy erasing a divine power, great power like brushing off snow. The frame didn't just fail, it inverted. The city turned on the man who'd pushed it, and the duped Li Huo sect leader found himself besieged by the same saint lords who'd been ready to kill me a minute earlier, all of them suddenly very interested in avenging Holy Sun Lin. And then the end of the world arrived, and my long, strange journey east finally paid off the thing the old man promised. Black-robed cultivators, saint lords among them, some at the 6th step, stepped out of the void, wounded the Li Huo sect leader into silence, and their leader crossed the whole square to me. Everyone in that city braced, sure this terrifying new power had come to finish me off, and the man bowed instead. Greetings, young clan master Lin. Young clan master. Of a demonic sect I'd never joined, a hidden thing more secret than the netherworld itself. The square went silent. And the black-robed leader played a recording stone. It showed the whole world exactly who'd staged the killings and the frame. The Netherworld first-grade hall caught on the stone, devouring talents and planting the bodies. Then he told the grieving sect leaders where the Netherworld stronghold was hidden, sealed off inside his own formation. And he stepped aside and let a whole generation of furious fathers go and tear it apart. Then he handed me a storage pouch. Inside it were the 100 burning essence pills, exactly as agreed, set aside for me by the previous young clan master of the end of the world. A man who'd gone on now to the Central Plains, a man named Wenjong. We'll meet again, he'd told me, all those months ago in the back of a black market pill shop, in a different capacity, and here it was, the forbidden alchemist who'd sold me my first bag of counterfeit gathering key pills, back when I was a crippled ex-saint with 1,000 spirit stones and a fresh set of scars, turned out to be the young master of a demon gate, and he'd left me his pills, and his title, and a road that runs all the way to the center of the world. So let me total it up, the way I total everything. Because the man I was at the start of this would not recognize the man standing in that square. I began as a joke. A crippled cast-off handed a poisoned bone with a ribbon on it by the girl I'd given 13 years and every spirit stone I owned, slapped and slandered by men who came to my sickbed to gloat, a corpse that hadn't finished falling. I stood in that holy city square as the immortal tomb's son-in-law, the Tianshuan Holy Land saint, and the secret young clan master of the Naihe Gate cleared in front of the entire central region, with a doomed wife I'd saved from the heavens, a Shura saintess who loved me in 2 bodies, and a Yao Guang fairy who was going to have to explain some feelings to herself eventually. The girl who threw me away is scattered across the stars. The man who took my saint's seat is a heart demon rotting in a cracked prison, and I did most of it without ever once paying a price I couldn't mail to someone else. And I still have 3 questions I can't answer, and every one of them is personal, which is how I know they matter. Why does a demon gate call me young clan master, and what was Wenjong really building around me before he vanished into the Central Plains? The Yaoguang Saint is the real demon art inheritor, and I'm the only one who knows it, which means sooner or later it's going to be him or me. And out on the endless sea, where I have to go to finish my 9th cave, the young master of the Netherworld first-grade hall, the one name the whole world lowers its voice for, has decided to stop sending envoys. Yanluo is coming for me himself. Ask me again in a little while whether I'm ready for that. Right now, I've got a wife in seclusion, 100 pills in my pocket, and a very tired hound asleep in a jade bracelet, and the sea is east, and so am I. I told you the sea was east. What I didn't know was that the sea had teeth. We sailed for the endless sea on a Tianshuan warship, and Ning came with me. A handful of elders came, and a 9-step Saint Lord ancestor came for muscle, because we were bound for the Beidou summit and the last 3 scriptures, and I wanted my 9th cave open before the year turned. Mo stayed home in the mausoleum, still sleeping off the lightning binge. The plan was simple. The plan is always simple. 7 days out, at night, the sea attacked us, pirates first. A dozen Saint Lords riding sea beasts, hitting the ship with a battle formation our ancestor couldn't break clean. He held them. He's a 9-step Saint Lord. Holding a dozen Saint Lords is a Tuesday for him. And then the real hand behind the pirates showed itself, and the Tuesday ended. The Dusk Lord, Netherworld first-grade hall. A 7-step Saint Lord, who'd been nursing a grudge against me since I embarrassed his hall, come all this way to collect. And behind him, invisible, the fingerprints of Yan Luo, because this was his plot, and it was cleaner than the last one. Don't kill the immortal tomb's son-in-law with your own hand that draws a celestial venerable down on your head. Just separate him from his people. Out on the open water, let the sea finish the job. No blood on anyone's sleeve. I added the whole Netherworld crew to the list the second they boarded, out of pure reflex, and my invisible lifespan tax went to work, sawing years off Saint Lords even while they were busy wrecking my ship. That would have been the end of them, except the sea had a bigger idea. Something came up out of the water that no side effect I own was going to touch. A creature the size of a mountain range. One eye, wide as a bay, opening slow. A whirlpool spinning out around it dozens of miles across, pulling ship and pirates and sky all toward one drain. A sea mirage. The old stories say it swallows islands. They say it drifts through the deep asleep, dreaming, and when it finally wakes it eats everything it dreamed, and it was waking up right underneath us. I threw the disciples clear. I opened the Tao Ti and the 9 Netherhound both and dug my heels into the pull and bought the Tianshuan people the half-second they needed to be flung out past the rim. It worked. They lived. And then the drain took me, hauled half of me down into the dark before I could so much as curse, and I was going in. And Ning was already clear. She was safe, past the rim, free. She looked back at me sinking, and she made her choice. Brother Lin, I'm not leaving. She turned around, in a whirlpool that was eating a mountain, and she grabbed my hand, and she let it take her too. Up above, the ancestor scattered the netherworld and killed the last stragglers and surfaced to nothing. His saint and his saintess, both gone, swallowed whole, carried off to whatever corner of the world the thing decided to wake in, and there's no chasing a sea mirage, where it spits you out. A 9-step saint lord couldn't fly back from in 5 years of trying. It spat us out at a place the whole endless sea only says in a whisper, the no-return land. I came to in a rainforest, under a black sky, in a downpour, aching in every bone. And I reached for my cultivation, the way you reach for a handhold in the dark. It wasn't there, not gone. Sealed. My dantian was a locked room with the key thrown away. I reached for the first cave and got silence. The second, silence. All 8 of them, asleep, none of them answering. My storage ring wouldn't open. And when I stretched my senses out for the ambient spiritual key that fills every inch of the normal world, the key you breathe without thinking, there was none, not thin, none. A whole world with the power switched off at the wall, and the rain was wrong. It was heavy. Heavy like it had mass, because it did, because it carried the absolute gravity of the no-return land, and it was pressing down on me like the sky had leaned an elbow on my spine. For about a minute there, I was a mortal man face down in the mud and the rain. No caves, no key, no treasures, nothing, for about a minute. Then I did what I always do when the world takes everything. I did the math. The system was still there. I could feel it, quiet and intact. Side effects still hung on every enemy I'd ever tagged, so not everything had been switched off. And one thing I owned had never been cultivation in the first place. The fighting character magic verse. It doesn't run on spiritual power. It isn't a martial art, and it isn't a treasure technique. It's a truth, a fact of the universe written in a black swastika that means 100-fold and takes no arguments. A truth doesn't care whether the QE is on. And under all the sealed caves, I still had one thing this realm couldn't touch. A body. A body I'd tempered on demon bones and 10 fiend bones and 100 tribulations, worth 300,000 jinn of raw physical force with absolutely nothing behind it. I stood up out of the mud. I punched the falling rain, and a whole sheet of it burst into mist. I punched the ground, and the ground gave me a crater. Then I laid the black swastika across my knuckles and punched the ground again, and I made a hole 10 meters wide and nearly fell into it. 300,000 jinn. Times 100, 30 million jinn of pure, dumb physical force. Let me put that in local money. The biggest monsters that roam this realm top out around 1 million jinn. The proud saint lords who've been trapped here for centuries have ground their bodies, inch by inch, up to 8, maybe 900,000. That's a lifetime of work, that number. That's the top of the mountain here. I'd washed up on the beach with 30 million and a bad attitude, because that's the whole secret of the no-return land. It runs on that one number and nothing else. It's a dead realm, a drifting island the size of a continent, sealed inside the endless sea, and the first rule is in the name, you don't leave. So the people who've been stuck here longest stopped trying to leave and started farming the ones who arrive. There are factions: the Spring Breeze Forest, the Lay-in Cave, the Ninefold Blades, the Reincarnation Valley, the Blood Spring, and every fresh batch of cultivators the sea mirage vomits onto the sand is a harvest to them. Because the only way out of this outer region and into the inner region, where the real secrets are buried, is to feed physical force into old altars, and a strong tempered body is the best fuel there is. So they hunt. The strong ones for the altar, the weak ones for the pot. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew, standing in that crater in the rain, was that An Ning had gone into the dark holding my hand, and she wasn't lying next to me now, and that I had 30 million jinn and a whole island to take apart to find her. I found somebody else first. She was a girl in a soaked river robe, silver hair down to her waist, and 8 men were herding her through the trees, driving her the way you drive game, calling her prey where she could hear it. The gravity rain had worn her down to nothing, and she was almost out of running. Then she saw me, clean clothes, dry face, obviously fresh off the mirage like her. She did the math faster than the hunters and threw herself behind my back. I am the Yang Saintess. Chin up, even now, even hiding behind a stranger in the rain. Fellow Taoist, come to my rescue at once. My father will reward you richly. Yang Saintess, Jiang Xinyu, Tai-Yin divine body, daughter of an endless sea holy master and a Central Plains princess, and I say this having met a great many spoiled people in my line of work, the single most spoiled human being I have ever stood next to. She tucked herself under my umbrella and thanked me in the exact tone of a queen handing a coin to a doorman. And I decided right there, in no particular hurry, to find out precisely where the bottom of that pride was, so I didn't move. I stood there with my hands in my sleeves and the umbrella tilted, and I let the 8 hunters walk in. I watched her go from arrogant to annoyed, from annoyed to alarmed, from alarmed, as the circle closed and I still hadn't so much as shifted my weight, all the way down to the Yang Saintess of the endless sea, on her knees in the mud, gripping my sleeve, begging a man whose name she hadn't bothered to ask to please save her. She'd agree to anything. When the ordering stopped and the asking started, I moved. One punch. The 8 of them came apart into a red mist the rain washed flat before it hit the leaves. 30 million jinn doesn't leave enough to bury, it barely leaves enough to notice. She stared at the empty space where the hunters had been like I'd personally rewritten the laws of the world, which locally I had. Then she asked, still not quite able to force the word please all the way out, whether I might take her along. I made her ask it properly. I made her tell me her name, which she'd somehow skipped while demanding I die for her, and then, because she genuinely could not stand up under that rain, I carried her, one arm, umbrella in the other hand. And I would like it entered into the record that the proud xianxia of the endless sea spent the entire walk shrieking directly into my ear and clamping both hands over my eyes every single time a hedgehog-shaped forest beast the size of a melon wandered across the path. Blind, one-armed, ankle-deep in mud, being throttled by a divine-bodied coward over a rodent. For a woman the heavens built a special body for, she was the bravest person I have ever met, right up until anything happened. I put her in a hollow tree, gave her the umbrella, and told her I had someone of my own to find. She didn't care for that. The word someone landed, and then the phrase Tao companion landed, and her face did something quiet and jealous that I could tell surprised even her. I left her there, sulking and dry and safe, and I followed the thread that had been tugging at my ribs since I opened my eyes. A child of heavenly condemnation can feel his own luck pulling. Mine was pulling hard in one direction toward the worst possible thing. It was pulling me toward a cliff where a woman in red was choosing the drop over the men behind her, and Ning had woken in this place as the Shura. The Red Sister. Of course she had. The Gentle One could never have survived that first hour in the rain, so the Blood Lotus took the wheel and kept them both breathing, and the Shura, cold and fast and out of room, had been run all the way to the lip of a 1,000-foot fall by the ninefold blades. She looked at the men, she looked at the drop, she picked the drop. I hit the cliff edge at 10 million jinn of speed, and I went off it after her without slowing down, and I caught her in the empty air 100 feet below the rim and pulled her into my chest and held on like the world was trying to take her, because it was. The red drained out of her dress, the stiffness went out of her shoulders. The Gentle Sister came up to the surface with her eyes already wet and said into my collar, "Brother Lin, you finally came." "I'm sorry, Ninger," I said. "I'm a little late. I'll try to be earlier next time." There was a beast waiting at the bottom of that ravine, a big dragon-shaped thing that lunged the instant we landed, and it made her flinch against me, and that was the entire reason it needed to die. I put one heel through its skull. And then, in the hidden valley at the base of the cliff, we found something the ninefold blades had been guarding without understanding. A thunder pool. Raw lightning gone liquid and slow and strangely gentle, the kind of thunder that tempers a body instead of burning it off the bone. And beside it, an ancient stele, old past reading, a dragon-binding stele, the sort of relic that measures one thing only, pure physical force. I set my hand on it. It read me back in glowing script. 300,000 jinn bear. 30 million with the swastika lit. And Ning tried it too. 3,000 jinn as the Gentle Sister. 5,000 as the demon. She pouted about the gap between our numbers, and I found that unreasonably charming and decided not to examine why. We went into the thunder pool together and let it forge us harder, my 300,000 climbing toward 5, hers climbing right behind, and at the bottom, under the light, we found the source of it, a corpse, uncorrupted after who knows how many ages, coiled and enormous. A Swanee, a son of the true dragon, dead a long, long time with a dragon pearl of pure thunder still sitting in its jaws. I closed a 30 million jinn grip on the pearl, and it came loose, and for one heartbeat I felt the last thing the creature ever felt. A dragon's son, one of the strong ones, trapped in the no-return land with no way out, no way home, growing weaker year by year by year, withering to a coil of bone in the dark. It hadn't been killed, it had just never been allowed to leave. That one shut me up for a while. A place there's no returning from. The name's not a poem. It's a promise. Ninger. I held the pearl, and I held her hand. Listen to me. I'm getting you out of here. I don't know the road yet, but I'm not a dragon and I don't wither, and I have never once in my life stayed where I was put. And the Gentle Sister, who is a better person than I will ever be, squeezed my hand and asked, in a small voice, whether we oughtn't go back for that poor Kui Yang girl I'd left up in a tree, all alone, with no one in the world to lean on. My wife, worried sick about the girl who'd been jealous of her existence an hour before the two of them had even met. I told you, kinder than I deserve. Now. We weren't the only two the mirage had eaten. The whole ambush had gone down the drain, and other people besides, and the no-return land was busy with all of them at once. Jiang Xinyu, it turned out, had a hero on the way, Her own sect brother, the Guiyang Holy Sun, a serious young man named Zhao Yuan, had washed up on the same beach, rounded up his scattered disciples, and set about becoming her rescuer, mostly because he'd loved her for years and she had never once looked at him the way he wanted. He choked down a fortune in body-strengthening fruits and shoved himself up to 430,000 jin, which is a genuinely impressive number, and he went to save the girl. I want you to hold on to that number. 430,000. Remember how proud he was of it. And on the far side of the island, a Nine Heavens Holy Palace talent, the Sword Firmament Holy Sun, had woken up strapped to a rack in the Layan cave with his tempered body marked down for the altar fires. He tore their ropes apart with 100 refined body worth 800,000 jin, beat every one of his captors flat, and choked one truth out of them before he let the last one go. His saintess, the woman he'd crossed a sea to protect, had already been taken. The Spring Breeze Forest had her, and they were keeping her for a sacrifice. So the Sword Firmament Holy Sun shook hands with the men who'd just tried to butcher him for parts, and the whole ugly alliance turned and marched on the Spring Breeze Forest with murder in its teeth. Everybody on that island was pointed at the Spring Breeze Forest, and I was about to walk into the middle of all of it and solve it for them without meaning to, because I never mean to do anything for these people. It just keeps happening. It started with Zhang Xinyu, who had not stayed in her tree. She'd heard hunters coming and bolted, the way a spoiled girl who's never had to think does, and gotten herself cornered a second time. And this time it was two factions, the Spring Breeze Forest and the Blood Spring both, closing in from either side to drag her off to their separate altars. And this is the moment Zhao Yuan got his lifelong wish. He arrived. He got to be her hero, at last, at exactly the right dramatic second. He charged into the clearing, shouting that she had nothing to fear now that he was here. He was beaten half to death in front of her in about 30 seconds. 430,000 jin is a mountain of strength, right up until it meets something bigger, and the Spring Breeze hunters were bigger. His grand entrance ended with the Guiyang Holy Sun on his hands and knees in the mud, coughing into it, while his own disciples formed a line in front of the girl and shouted at her to run, and called it buying time, which is the polite word for it. That's the tableau I walked into, with a Ning at my shoulder, the doomed hero, the circling wolves, the saintess in the middle. I ended the entire situation with one punch. Red mist, both factions, the whole clearing wiped clean between one breath and the next. And Jiang Xinyu looked up out of the mud, past her bleeding rescuer, at the man who'd once dumped her in a tree and walked off. And for the first time since I'd met her, she didn't give an order. She asked. And then she thanked me, and meant it. And when a Ning stepped forward and smiled and told her gently that she was welcome to travel with us, the Guiyang Saintess took my wife's offered hand and did not let go of it again. I would love to tell you that was my plan. It was not my plan. My wife adopted a stray saintess off the forest floor because she felt sorry for her, and I was outvoted, on the spot, by the only 2 votes in my life that count. Which is, I'll be honest, a fairly complete preview of how the rest of my story goes. Zhao Yuan watched the woman he had bled into the dirt for walk away after another man without so much as a glance back. I have seen a lot of faces break in my time. I have rarely seen one try to do it in that many directions at once. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He'd wanted to be the hero of her story so badly, and he'd finally learned the thing it takes some men a whole life to learn. That wanting to be the hero and being the strongest man in the room are 2 completely different resumes. After that, it was housekeeping. I hunted down the ninefold blades because they were the ones who'd run my wife off a cliff, and I do not let that go. Ever. I tore the arms off their leader and left him alive as a note to the others about what running my wife off a cliff costs. And then I noticed that every road on the whole island now pointed at the same place, the Spring Breeze Forest. So I followed the crowd to go and see what the entire no-return land was so frightened of. What the entire no-return land was so frightened of was not a man. The red-robed master of the Spring Breeze Forest wore a person's shape, and wore it well, right up until the moment the Sword Firmament Holy Sun and the Layan Cave and the whole vengeful alliance finally ran it to ground. Then it stopped bothering. It split its human skin open from the inside and stepped out as the thing it had always been under there. A monster. A vast fish and octopus horror, with a human face grinning in the middle of it and a dozen black tentacles unfolding. An ancient devil that had been swallowing the bodies of every soul this island ever fed it, growing on them, using them to reach for the barrier. It caught one of the 9 heavens' holy suns in the open, the one they called Xuan Ming, and swallowed him whole in front of his sworn brothers, and the Alliance's battle line, 800,000 jin and better, began to fold. I arrived with a Ning on my right and Zhang Xinyu on my left. I looked at the monster-eating heroes, I looked at the heroes losing, and I hit it. No sword secret, no grass character, none of my chi-fed tricks work in this dead place. I didn't reach for them. I put 30 million jin of bare knuckle through the center of that thing, and it came apart into black and red mist across the entire clearing. Every tentacle, the grinning face, all of it, gone in a single beat. And when the mist tried to shiver back together, because devils that old always try, I brought a palm straight down and finished the argument, because a thing like that does not get a second sentence. On its way out, it coughed the swallowed holy sun back up onto the grass, whole and breathing and extremely confused. The 9 heavens survivors stood in the ruins and looked at the stranger who had just deleted, in one punch, the monster that had almost ended all of them. And then, very sensibly, they started calling me senior, and that more or less is where the road runs out, for now, because past the outer region, past the factions and the altars and the endless gravity rain, there is a barrier. And on the far side of that barrier is the true no-return land, the inner region, where the actual transcendent secrets are buried, the ones the whole island has been feeding bodies to old stone to reach. To crack that barrier, you need to drive tens of millions of jinn of physical force straight into it. There is exactly one man on this whole island who hits that hard. He's the one who's been telling you this story, so this is where I'll leave it. Standing at the edge of a realm no one leaves, with my wife on one arm and a reformed saintess on the other, and a wall in front of me that only I can break, in a world that switched off everyone's power but mine. Let me total it up one last time, because it's the last thing I'll say, and it's the only measurement that ever mattered. I started this as a crippled cast-off. A boy handed a poisoned bone with a silk ribbon tied around it by the girl he'd given 13 years to, slapped in front of a crowd. Slandered by men who'd come specifically to watch me fall, a corpse that simply refused to finish dropping. I got from there to here by declining every single morning to fall the rest of the way. The girl who betrayed me is scattered across the stars. The golden boy they built to replace me is a heart demon rotting behind cracked jade. I married a woman the heavens had signed a death warrant on, and I tore the warrant up. I've been made the saint of a holy land I never trained a day in, and named the young master of a demon gate I never once joined. And now my enemy's cleverest plan yet has dropped me into the one place in all the world where cultivation is a rumor, where every scheme and every sponsor and every borrowed title falls straight off a man, and all that's left standing is whatever he actually is with his own 2 hands. 30 million jinn, as it turns out. That's what I am with my own 2 hands. Yanluo built this whole thing to strip me down to nothing and let the sea do his killing for him. And instead, the sea handed me a realm no one escapes, a barrier only I can open, and 2 more people who looked at the drowning man and chose to jump in after him. The Yaoguang Saint is still out there wearing the world's hunt for a demon that is actually him, and I am still the only living soul who knows it. Yanluo is still coming, and now the 2 of us have a personal appointment that I intend to keep. And somewhere out past all of it, a demon gate keeps calling me young master, for a reason not one person will explain to my face, which means the single biggest secret left in this entire story is still the truth about my own name. Ask me again, once I've put my fist through that barrier and walked into the inner region, whether there is any place left in this world built strong enough to hold me. The answer is going to be no. It's been no for a good while now. I just enjoy hearing myself say it.